In this video, we're breaking down 3 hours of SpongeBob mistakes. Let's get started. We're starting it off with Club SpongeBob Squidward's yellow tentacle. One of the most documented animation errors in SpongeBob SquarePants history happened during a scene where Squidward was desperately asking a toy shell for permission to eat. In the episode Club SpongeBob, which first aired on the 12th of July, 2002, Squidward's normally blue tentacle suddenly turned the same yellow color as SpongeBob's body during a critical close-up shot of the magic conch shell. The episode begins with a simple premise. SpongeBob and Patrick had built a clubhouse in a tall piece of kelp, and they had been stuck up there for 3 whole days. When Squidward tries to climb up to prove he can join their club, the entire structure catapults into the kelp forest, trapping all 3 of them in the wilderness. This setup creates the perfect storm for one of the show's most beloved episodes, and also for one of its most visible animation mistakes. The kelp forest becomes their prison. Squidward panics immediately, running around and asking where they are. He realizes they're lost with no way out, stuck in the middle of nowhere with SpongeBob and Patrick. He even breaks the 4th wall by asking why every 11 minutes of his life must be filled with misery. While Squidward spirals into despair, SpongeBob stays optimistic and introduces a solution: the magic conch shell. This pink shell with a pull string works like a children's toy, giving pre-recorded answers when you ask it questions. SpongeBob asks if he'll ever get married, and the shell responds, maybe, someday. Patrick and SpongeBob treat this toy like it holds the wisdom of the universe. Squidward thinks this is completely ridiculous. He calls it a stupid toy and asks how it could possibly help them. But SpongeBob and Patrick take the magic conch seriously. They explain that their club always takes its advice before doing anything. When SpongeBob asks the shell what they need to do to get out of the kelp forest, the magic conch gives a one-word answer: nothing. Patrick declares that the shell has spoken. Squidward protests, saying they can't just sit there and do nothing. But in an instant, SpongeBob and Patrick are sitting down, completely still, doing absolutely nothing. They don't move. They don't speak. They just sit. Squidward can't believe they're actually taking advice from a toy. He decides to find his own way out. He walks into the kelp forest alone, mocking them as sad clowns whose circus tent will come crashing down. But the kelp forest disorients him quickly. He runs in circles, grows scared, trips and falls. When he sees light and thinks he's free, he runs toward it triumphantly, only to discover he's ended up right back where SpongeBob and Patrick are still sitting motionless. Defeated, Squidward returns and sets up what he calls Club Squidward. He builds a small fire and cooks a bug he caught. He waves the pan over SpongeBob's nose, taunting him about how good it smells and how they haven't eaten in days. He does the same to Patrick, saying a big boy has to eat. Then he mocks them for having a club president that's just a shell. He tells them if they had listened to him instead of a talking clam that tells them nothing, they'd have food, shelter, and a roaring fire. He laughs at the idea that answers to all their problems would just fall right out of the sky. At that exact moment, an airplane falls out of the sky. The pilot yells that they're falling and need to drop the load. The plane releases picnic supplies that land directly where SpongeBob and Patrick are sitting. A full banquet appears: Krabby Patties, turkey, soda, ketchup, cookies, orange juice, spaghetti, soup, canned meat, smoked sausages, and sandwiches. SpongeBob and Patrick immediately stand up and praise the magic conch. They start eating while Squidward stares in complete shock. Even the bug he was cooking escapes, hits him with a stick, and runs away. Squidward's attitude changes instantly. He approaches SpongeBob, commenting on how much food they have and how delicious everything looks. He tries to smell the smoked sausages, but Patrick sucks them into his mouth along with Squidward's nose. Squidward stammers and asks if he's still part of the club. SpongeBob responds with a simple phrase: once a member, always a member. They toast to the club while Squidward weakly mimics their victory screech. He rushes to the table, trying to decide what to eat first. But SpongeBob stops him. He suggests Squidward should ask the magic conch. Squidward sarcastically says that'll happen right after he consults the magic toenail. He prepares to eat, but SpongeBob and Patrick pull the table away and block it. SpongeBob gasps and asks if Squidward is questioning the authority of the magic conch. He explains that the conch gave them this banquet and is the cornerstone of their organization. Patrick whispers that maybe Squidward isn't a brother. Squidward backpedals. He claims he loves this piece of plastic and takes the magic conch from SpongeBob. He asks politely if he should have the spaghetti or the turkey. The magic conch answers neither. Squidward asks about the soup. The shell responds, I don't think so. Growing annoyed, Squidward asks if he could have anything to eat. The magic conch delivers a flat no. Squidward can't believe it. He's starving. Patrick takes the shell and asks if Squidward can have a yummy, delicious, super terrific sandwich. The magic conch says no. Then Patrick asks if he himself can have the sandwich. The magic conch says yes. Patrick vacuums the entire sandwich into his mouth and burps. Squidward grabs the shell. He asks repeatedly if he can have something to eat. 3 times in a row, the magic conch says no. Frustrated, Squidward asks if the shell can say anything else but no. This is where the animation error happens. The magic conch responds, "Try asking again." During the close-up shot of the magic conch shell, Squidward's tentacle holding it appears bright yellow instead of his normal blue-green color. The error is visible enough that anyone paying attention to the scene can spot it. Squidward's tentacles are one of his most recognizable features, making the wrong color stand out immediately. Squidward asks with a hopeful grin if he can have something to eat. The magic conch responds in a very insulting, sarcastic tone. "No!" Squidward's face contorts with rage. He grits his teeth and shakes uncontrollably, stammering out of control. SpongeBob asks if he's alright. Patrick suggests asking the shell if Squidward is okay. The error doesn't affect the story. The scene continues exactly as intended. A kelp forest ranger appears, cutting through the kelp with a machete. Squidward gasps, thinking he's saved. He runs to the ranger and explains he's been stranded for weeks with 2 barnacle heads and their magic conch shell. The ranger's eyes go cross-eyed as he reveals he has his own magic conch shell. SpongeBob and Patrick recognize him as a fellow club member. All 3 of them do their victory screech. Squidward looks dumbstruck. The ranger explains his conch told him to come save them. They all cheer for the magic conches. But then the ranger asks his shell what they should do now. The magic conch gives the same answer it gave at the beginning. Nothing. The ranger, SpongeBob, and Patrick all sit down doing nothing. Squidward, completely defeated, sits down with them and joins in saying, "All hail the magic conch." The episode ends with all 4 characters sitting in the kelp forest, doing absolutely nothing, while they wait for the magic conch to tell them what to do next. The animation error with Squidward's yellow tentacle becomes a small footnote in what's otherwise considered one of the best episodes of the series. The error itself happened during the animation production process. When animators work on a scene, different team members handle different elements. Someone animates the characters, someone else adds the colors, and another person checks the final product. With hundreds of frames in every episode and tight production deadlines, small mistakes can slip through. Color errors are among the most common types of animation mistakes because the process involves matching exact color codes to specific parts of characters. If someone accidentally selects the wrong color layer or applies SpongeBob's yellow to Squidward's arm by mistake, it might not get caught until the episode has already aired. What makes this error interesting is how visible it is. Some animation mistakes only last for a single frame and require pausing at the exact right moment to see them. This error appears during a close-up shot that stays on screen long enough for viewers to notice. The magic conch shell is the focus of the shot, but Squidward's tentacle holding it is right there in frame, colored completely wrong. Fans discovered the error and documented it across multiple platforms. Encyclopedia SpongeBobia, the largest SpongeBob wiki, lists it in their episode mistakes section. MovieMistakes.com, a website dedicated to cataloging errors in movies and TV shows, includes it in their SpongeBob entry. Screen Rant wrote an article about hilarious SpongeBob animation errors that nobody notices, and this one made the list. WatchMojo featured it in their top 10 SpongeBob mistakes that were left in video. The error became well known enough in the SpongeBob fan community that it's frequently cited as one of the show's most memorable animation mistakes. The episode itself remains a fan favorite despite the error. Club SpongeBob is frequently cited as one of the best SpongeBob episodes ever made. The absurd premise, the perfect comedic timing, and the dark humor of watching Squidward suffer while a toy shell controls everyone's decisions creates comedy gold. The magic conch became an iconic element of SpongeBob culture. Fans created memes using the shell's responses, especially the sarcastic "no" to Squidward. The episode teaches a lesson about blind faith and following advice without thinking, but it does so through pure absurdist humor. The animation error doesn't diminish the episode's quality. If anything, it adds to the show's charm. SpongeBob SquarePants has never been about perfect animation. It's always prioritized strong writing, memorable characters, and creative storytelling over technical perfection. The early seasons especially have a hand-drawn quality that gives them personality. Small errors remind viewers that real people made these episodes, working under tight deadlines to produce content that would entertain millions of children and adults. Club SpongeBob demonstrates why the show succeeded. It takes a simple children's toy and builds an entire episode around it. The magic conch could have been just a one-off joke, but the episode commits fully to the concept. SpongeBob and Patrick's unwavering faith in the shell contrasts perfectly with Squidward's rational skepticism. The fact that the shell ends up being right, that doing nothing actually works, makes Squidward's suffering even funnier. The ending, where even the forest ranger worships the magic conch, drives home the absurdity. The error serves as a reminder that animation is a collaborative, complex process. Every episode requires dozens of artists working together. Character designers create the models, storyboard artists plan the shots, animators bring the characters to life, colorists add the final touches, and editors put it all together. With so many steps and so many people involved, mistakes happen. The fact that this particular error made it through all those stages of production and review shows how easy it is for small details to slip past even experienced teams. For fans who love hunting for mistakes, errors like this add an extra layer of enjoyment to rewatching episodes. Finding animation errors becomes a game. Viewers pause at specific moments, compare screenshots, and share their discoveries online. The SpongeBob community has documented hundreds of errors across the show's long run. Some are obvious, like characters changing color. Others are subtle, like objects appearing and disappearing in the background. Each discovery adds to the collective knowledge of dedicated fans who've watched these episodes countless times. The yellow tentacle error in Club SpongeBob stands out because it happens during an emotionally important moment. Squidward is at his breaking point. He's been lost in the woods, mocked by his neighbors, denied food despite being starving, and now he's being humiliated by a toy. The close-up on the magic conch shell emphasizes how much power this inanimate object holds over everyone. Squidward's tentacle being the wrong color doesn't ruin the scene, but it does create a visual distraction for viewers who notice it. Animation errors like this one are valuable for understanding how cartoons are made. Modern animation software has made some types of errors less common, but mistakes still happen. Colors can be applied incorrectly, layers can overlap wrong, and continuity can break. The difference now is that digital animation allows for easier corrections. Episodes can be updated and re-rendered with fixes. Physical film made corrections much more expensive and difficult. The error also highlights how audiences consume media differently now compared to 2002, when this episode first aired. Back then, most viewers watched episodes once on television, maybe twice if they caught a rerun. VCR recordings existed, but the quality made small details harder to spot. Now, episodes are available in high definition on streaming platforms. Viewers can pause, rewind, and watch frame by frame. This increased scrutiny means errors that might have gone unnoticed for years get discovered and documented quickly. Club SpongeBob aired during what many fans consider the golden age of SpongeBob SquarePants. Season 3 produced some of the show's most memorable episodes. The writers and animators were hitting their stride, understanding exactly what made the show work. They knew how to balance humor for kids with jokes adults could appreciate. They knew when to be absurd and when to be sincere. Episodes from this era have a specific energy and creativity that fans still celebrate. The magic conch shell itself became more than just a prop in this episode. It represents blind faith taken to an extreme. SpongeBob and Patrick follow its advice without question, even when told to do nothing. Squidward represents the rational person who can't understand why anyone would trust a toy, but the episode subverts expectations by proving the magic conch right. Doing nothing does work. Food literally falls from the sky. The forest ranger who rescues them also worships the conch. Squidward's rational approach fails, while faith in the absurd succeeds. This philosophical layer makes Club SpongeBob more than just a comedy about getting lost in the woods. It's about control, faith, and how sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways. Squidward tries to take control and fails. SpongeBob and Patrick surrender control to the shell and succeed. The humor comes from watching Squidward's worldview collapse as the impossible keeps happening. The animation error doesn't interfere with any of these themes. Squidward's tentacle being yellow for one shot doesn't change the meaning of the scene. It's a technical mistake that slipped through quality control. The content, the dialogue, the comedic timing, and the message all remain intact. The error exists as a curiosity, something for fans to point out and discuss, but not something that ruins the viewing experience. Squidward's character shines in this episode, despite the animation error. His arc takes him from arrogant superiority through desperate survival attempts to complete defeat and acceptance. He starts by mocking SpongeBob and Patrick, claiming membership in over 20 exclusive clubs. He tries to leave and find civilization on his own. He builds his own camp and cooks his own food. He watches in disbelief as food falls from the sky. He begs to join the club and eat. He gets denied by the magic conch repeatedly. Finally, he sits down with everyone else and submits to doing nothing. This journey happens in just 11 minutes. The pacing is perfect. Every scene builds on the previous one. Squidward's frustration grows naturally. His final defeat feels earned. The yellow tentacle error occurs near the peak of his desperation, right before he completely loses his composure. In a way, the error happening during such an intense moment makes it more memorable. Fans who rewatch this scene specifically to see Squidward's breakdown will inevitably notice the color mistake. The episode has been analyzed, quoted, and memed extensively over the years. The magic conch shell became a symbol of arbitrary authority. People use screenshots of the shell saying no in response to questions online. The victory screech that SpongeBob and Patrick do became another iconic sound from the show. Lines like "All hail the magic conch" entered the SpongeBob lexicon. The episode's impact far exceeds the significance of one animation error. Looking at Club SpongeBob today, the yellow tentacle error serves as a time capsule of early 2000s television animation. It shows the production realities of creating a weekly cartoon series. Teams worked under pressure to deliver episodes on schedule. Quality control caught most errors, but some slipped through. Once an episode aired, it was done. There was no going back and fixing mistakes for future broadcasts unless the episode was specifically remastered. The error stands as proof that even the most beloved episodes of the most successful cartoons contain imperfections. SpongeBob SquarePants became a cultural phenomenon not because every frame was perfect, but because the writing, characters, and humor connected with audiences. A yellow tentacle where there should be a blue one doesn't change the fact that Club SpongeBob is a masterclass in animated comedy. It remains funny, clever, and memorable more than 20 years after it first aired. For SpongeBob fans, knowing about this error adds depth to their appreciation of the show. It's a small piece of trivia that demonstrates close attention to detail. It's something to point out when watching with friends. It's evidence that they've watched this episode so many times they notice things others miss. The error becomes part of the episode's identity, one more thing that makes Club SpongeBob special to those who love it. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Missing Identity, The Vanishing House. In the SpongeBob SquarePants episode Missing Identity, which aired on the 19th of January 2004, Squidward's iconic Easter Island head house completely disappears from Conch Street during a critical scene. The animation error occurs when SpongeBob and Patrick are standing outside trying to retrace SpongeBob's morning routine, and the shot shows SpongeBob's pineapple house and Patrick's rock with nothing between them. Squidward's house, which should always be visible between the two, is simply gone. The episode starts in a diner on a rainy night. SpongeBob sits in a booth drinking coffee, telling his story to anyone who will listen. A man named Ted is looking for his pen, and the waitress loans him hers. SpongeBob interrupts to say he once lost something more important than a pen. He lost something he couldn't live without, his identity. Ted and the waitress try to ignore him and continue their conversation, but SpongeBob starts telling his story anyway. The flashback begins on Monday morning. SpongeBob wakes up and throws his blanket in the air, shouting, "Good morning, world, and all who inhabit it." The blanket lands on his head and he can't see. He calls for Gary to help him, stumbling around blindly. He falls down his staircase, and his alarm clock spits him across the room. He crashes into his window and slides down to where Gary is waiting. After recovering from what he calls his horrific incident of terror, SpongeBob decides to make breakfast for Gary. He grabs a can of snail po and sings about the most important meal of the day, serving it up Gary's way. He pours the food into Gary's bowl, then realizes he's been feeding this to Gary for years without knowing what it tastes like. He sticks out his tongue and tastes the snail food. The reaction is immediate and violent. SpongeBob's disgusted blech echoes from his house, through the streets of Bikini Bottom, all the way to the Snail Po headquarters, where an employee named Peterson feels a disturbance. SpongeBob looks at his watch and realizes all these shenanigans made him late for work. He rushes to get dressed, spinning around as his pants end up on his head, in his arm, and finally in the correct place. He walks out the door and past Patrick, who says hi. SpongeBob returns the greeting and skips to work singing. At the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob serves a Krabby Patty to a customer named Debbie. She thanks him but points out that he should be wearing a name tag so she can thank him properly. SpongeBob laughs and insists he is wearing a name tag, pointing to the spot on his shirt where it should be. When he looks down, he realizes it's not there. He starts hyperventilating. Squidward walks over to see what's wrong. SpongeBob tells Squidward this is the most terrible thing that ever happened to him. He lost his name tag. He even screams "Pourquoi?", which is French for why. Squidward tries to calm him down, suggesting he can just get a new one. But SpongeBob doesn't want a new one. His name tag is out there somewhere, lost and hungry. He worries someone might be using it for evil purposes. He imagines a bank robber wearing his name tag during a robbery, screaming, "Attica!" SpongeBob faints from the stress. When he wakes up, Squidward explains that he fainted because he lost his name tag. This makes SpongeBob hyperventilate again. Squidward picks him up and asks when losing a name tag became the end of the world. At that exact moment, Mr. Krabs emerges from his office to announce a surprise uniform inspection in 1 hour. Anyone who doesn't pass gets the boot. He holds up a large, stinky black boot emitting toxic green fumes. The boot is very stinky, and whoever fails inspection will have to wear it all day. Squidward offers helpful advice. He tells SpongeBob to just retrace his steps if he wants to find his name tag. SpongeBob thinks this is genius and rushes off, telling Squidward to cover for him. Squidward feels flattered at being called a genius, but then realizes SpongeBob left him to do all the work. SpongeBob walks down the road trying to remember everything he did that morning. He passes Patrick, who says hi, just like he did earlier. SpongeBob runs back and asks Patrick to say hi to him again, because he needs to retrace his steps. Patrick refuses, saying his hellos aren't some tape recording you can rewind and play over. They're special. SpongeBob explains it's an emergency because he lost his name tag. Patrick immediately starts hyperventilating, just like SpongeBob did. The scene cuts to SpongeBob poking his head out of his window while Patrick stands outside his house. This is where the animation error occurs. The camera shows the street with SpongeBob's pineapple house and Patrick's rock clearly visible, but Squidward's Easter Island head house, which should be right between them, is completely missing. The house simply isn't there. It's as if Squidward doesn't exist on Conch Street at all. SpongeBob explains the plan to Patrick. Patrick will stand outside, and when SpongeBob walks by after retracing his steps, Patrick will say hi just like he did that morning. Patrick confirms he understands. SpongeBob decides to start from the beginning when he woke up. He climbs into bed and pretends to sleep, then jumps up and throws his blanket in the air. The blanket falls on his head again, causing him to fall, and his alarm clock falls on him. He falls down the stairs, gets shot across the room by the alarm clock, and smacks into his window. SpongeBob continues his routine, singing about serving breakfast Gary's way and tasting the snail po with the same disgusted blech. He walks outside and past Patrick, but Patrick doesn't say anything. SpongeBob yells at him for missing his cue. Patrick simply says hi after the fact. SpongeBob gets shocked and tells him they need to take it from the top. This begins a series of increasingly frustrating attempts to recreate the morning perfectly. SpongeBob does his entire routine over and over. Each time involves jumping out of bed, getting his blanket stuck on his head, falling down the stairs, hitting the window, singing to Gary, and tasting the horrible snail food. Each time, Patrick messes up his one line. On the second attempt, Patrick says nothing again. When SpongeBob confronts him, Patrick asks, "What's my motivation?" SpongeBob angrily tells him to forget the motivation and just say hi. On the third attempt, Patrick says, "Hi, Patrick," then realizes he's Patrick and apologizes while laughing. On the fourth attempt, Patrick says, "Hi, SpongeBob," and can't stop laughing about the mistake. He even breaks the fourth wall, turning to the audience and saying, "Sorry, people." The episode shows SpongeBob's routine in a split-screen format with 4 frames. The first frame shows him falling off his bed, the second shows him falling down the stairs, the third shows him feeding Gary, and the fourth shows him hitting the window and saying blech. Outside, Patrick is trying not to laugh and admits he has the giggles. SpongeBob gives up, saying he'll never find his name tag in time for inspection. Patrick asks what he did after the morning greeting. SpongeBob thinks back and remembers skipping merrily to the Krusty Krab, saying hello to Old Man Jenkins, and placing an apple on Mr. Krabs' desk. He also mentions that 2 guys threw him in the dumpster. The flashback shows SpongeBob being thrown into the dumpster outside the Krusty Krab, laughing and saying, "Good one, guys!" Patrick has an idea. Maybe the name tag is in the apple on Mr. Krabs' desk. SpongeBob thinks Patrick is a genius, but then realizes Mr. Krabs probably threw the apple away by now. Patrick suggests looking in the dumpster. They go to the dumpster behind the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob comments on the terrible stench. Patrick calls it the stench of discovery and offers to give SpongeBob a boost. He gets on all 4s so SpongeBob can climb in. SpongeBob jumps into the dumpster and says it's not so bad once you get used to it. Patrick wishes he had a nose. SpongeBob invites him to join, saying the garbage is fine. Patrick does a cannonball into the dumpster, spitting out dirt and laughing with filth covering his teeth. SpongeBob suggests they split up to search. Patrick starts digging enthusiastically, throwing garbage onto SpongeBob in the process. SpongeBob tries to get Patrick's attention, but Patrick thinks he's being told to search harder. He digs faster and faster, burying SpongeBob under more garbage. Finally, SpongeBob gets Patrick to stop and look at him. Patrick apologizes and starts pulling the trash off. He finds a Stingray 5000 single and gets excited, saying these guys rock and wondering why anyone would throw it away. SpongeBob loses his patience. He throws all the garbage away in anger and asks if Patrick has forgotten what they're looking for while knee-deep in yesterday's top 40 songs. Patrick admits he has forgotten. SpongeBob gives him hints. 2 words. First word, my. Second word, name tag. Patrick asks for another hint. SpongeBob looks directly at the camera and blinks twice, showing his frustration. He checks his watch and realizes he only has 1 minute until inspection. He screams and starts digging frantically. Patrick notices something on SpongeBob's back and tries to tell him. SpongeBob is too focused to listen. Patrick says he knows where the name tag is, but when SpongeBob turns around to ask where, Patrick can't remember. This happens multiple times. Every time SpongeBob turns around, the name tag becomes visible again on his back, but Patrick forgets where it is. SpongeBob gets increasingly frustrated. He asks if Patrick is with him or against him. Patrick asks for a hint. SpongeBob simply turns back around. Patrick sees the name tag again and shouts that he sees it. SpongeBob dismisses him as the boy who cried name tag and tells him to crawl back under his rock if he's not going to help. Patrick gets angry and turns around. He says at least he doesn't wear his shirt backwards. SpongeBob suddenly realizes what Patrick said. He looks at his clothes in confusion and bends his head back to see his own back. There's his name tag. His shirt has been on backwards the entire time. He had his identity all along. He spins his shirt around to the correct position and checks his watch. He's just in time for inspection. He thanks Patrick, and they shake hands. Back at the Krusty Krab, uniform inspection is underway. Mr. Krabs inspects Squidward first. His hat and uniform are in order, though Mr. Krabs notices a few nose hairs and tells him to shave. Squidward passes inspection. Mr. Krabs moves to SpongeBob, who salutes and says everything is shipshape. But Mr. Krabs smells something terrible. He asks what the stench is. SpongeBob responds with one word, discovery. Mr. Krabs picks him up and sets him outside. The flashback ends and the scene returns to the diner. SpongeBob finishes his story, saying that's how he got his identity back. Ted yawns while the waitress checks her watch. She comments that SpongeBob managed to kill 11 minutes. This is a meta joke because SpongeBob episodes are 11 minutes long. SpongeBob laughs and thanks her, calling her Betty based on her name tag. She corrects him, explaining she's not Betty. She just borrowed Betty's uniform while hers is at the cleaners. SpongeBob looks at the camera confused and blinks twice. The episode ends. The animation error with Squidward's missing house happens during the outdoor scenes when SpongeBob and Patrick are trying to recreate the morning routine. Conch Street is one of the most recognizable locations in SpongeBob SquarePants. The three houses sitting side by side define the neighborhood. SpongeBob's pineapple on the left, Squidward's Easter Island head in the middle, and Patrick's rock on the right. These houses appear in almost every episode. Their placement is iconic. Removing one of them creates a visual gap that fans immediately notice. Animation errors like this happen for several reasons. When producing a television show, artists work on different scenes separately. Someone draws the background for one scene while someone else works on the characters. These elements get combined later in the production process. If a background artist forgets to include Squidward's house in a particular shot, and nobody catches the mistake during quality control, the error makes it into the final episode. The missing house error is particularly noticeable because Conch Street appears so frequently throughout the series. Fans know exactly what it should look like. The three houses have distinct shapes that create a specific silhouette. When one house is missing, the entire street looks wrong. It's like looking at a face with a missing tooth. The gap stands out. What makes this error interesting is that it happens multiple times during the episode. SpongeBob goes through his morning routine repeatedly, and each time the camera shows the exterior of his house with Patrick waiting outside. In at least one of these shots, Squidward's house is completely absent. The background shows SpongeBob's pineapple and Patrick's rock with empty space between them. The error doesn't affect the story. The plot focuses entirely on SpongeBob's search for his name tag. Squidward plays a minimal role, offering the advice to retrace steps and then appearing briefly at the end during inspection. The missing house is purely a visual mistake that doesn't impact anything the characters say or do. Viewers watching for the first time might not even notice because they're focused on SpongeBob and Patrick's comedy routine. Missing identity is memorable for many reasons beyond the animation error. The episode structure is unique because it uses a framing device. The entire main story is a flashback being told at a diner. This narrative technique isn't common in SpongeBob. Most episodes present events as they happen rather than as stories being retold. The diner scenes at the beginning and end give the episode a different feel from typical SpongeBob adventures. The episode also features excellent physical comedy. SpongeBob's morning routine becomes funnier each time he repeats it. The first time, viewers see the genuine accident of the blanket getting stuck and the alarm clock falling. By the fourth or fifth time, the routine becomes mechanical and absurd. SpongeBob is deliberately recreating his own painful accidents in desperate pursuit of his name tag. The split screen showing all four parts of his routine simultaneously emphasizes how ridiculous the whole situation has become. Patrick's inability to say one simple line provides another layer of comedy. His job is incredibly simple. All he has to do is say, "Hi, SpongeBob," when SpongeBob walks by. But he manages to mess it up in creative ways every single time. He forgets to say anything. He asks for motivation. He says the wrong name. He gets the giggles. Patrick's incompetence at this trivial task drives SpongeBob to frustration, creating a classic comedy dynamic. The dumpster sequence offers gross-out humor that SpongeBob excels at. SpongeBob and Patrick digging through rotting garbage, with Patrick's teeth full of filth and both of them covered in refuse, appeals to the show's younger audience while also providing visual gags for older viewers. The discovery of the Stingray 5000 single is a specific reference that adults would appreciate more than children. The twist ending where SpongeBob's shirt was backwards the whole time delivers a satisfying conclusion. Throughout the episode, viewers see SpongeBob searching desperately for his name tag. He retraces his steps multiple times. He digs through a disgusting dumpster. He's running out of time before inspection. The solution was literally on his back the entire time. Patrick tried to tell him, but SpongeBob was too focused to listen. This creates dramatic irony where the audience knows something the main character doesn't. The final joke about the waitress not actually being Betty provides one more twist. SpongeBob spent the whole episode telling a story about losing his identity and getting it back. At the end, he calls someone by the wrong name because they're wearing someone else's uniform. It's a perfect bookend that reinforces the episode's theme about identity and name tags. The animation error exists as a documented fact in the SpongeBob fan community. Multiple websites catalog mistakes from the show, and Squidward's missing house appears on several of these lists. Encyclopedia SpongeBobia, the comprehensive fan wiki, includes it in their episode trivia section. The error has been discussed on forums and social media by fans who noticed it while watching. For a show that ran for over 20 years and produced hundreds of episodes, animation errors are inevitable. The production schedule for television animation is demanding. Studios need to produce new episodes constantly to keep up with broadcast schedules. Artists work under tight deadlines with limited time for revisions. Small mistakes slip through quality control checks. What matters is whether the errors distract from the viewing experience or impact the story. In this case, the missing house doesn't ruin the episode. Missing Identity remains a well-regarded episode from Season 3, which many fans consider part of SpongeBob's golden era. The writing is sharp, the comedy works, and the story structure is creative. The animation error is a curiosity that dedicated fans notice on rewatches, but it doesn't diminish the episode's overall quality. The error actually demonstrates how closely fans watch and analyze their favorite shows. Someone had to notice that Squidward's house was missing in a brief exterior shot during an 11-minute episode. They had to care enough to document it and share the information with other fans. This level of attention to detail shows the depth of SpongeBob's fan base and their investment in the show's world. Squidward's house itself is an iconic design. The Easter Island head shape makes it instantly recognizable. Real Moai statues exist on Easter Island in Chile, massive stone figures with distinctive long faces and prominent noses. Squidward's house is a cartoonish version of these ancient monuments, fitting his artistic pretensions and grumpy personality. The house has appeared in countless episodes, sometimes getting destroyed and rebuilt. It's as much a character in the show as any of the residents. The fact that such a recognizable landmark could be missing from a shot highlights how complex animation production is. Every scene requires multiple layers: backgrounds, characters, props, effects, and more. Each layer needs to be aligned correctly and rendered in the right order. Missing one element can create holes in the final image. The missing house suggests that the background layer for this particular shot didn't include Squidward's house, or it was accidentally turned off during rendering. Modern animation software makes these errors easier to catch and fix, but it also makes them easier to create. Digital animation involves managing hundreds of layers and files. One wrong click can hide an element that should be visible. Without careful checking, mistakes make it into final episodes. The missing identity error likely resulted from a simple oversight during a rushed production schedule rather than any major problem with the animation process. The episode aired during Season 3, which premiered in 2001 and ran through 2004. This period is often considered SpongeBob's peak in terms of writing quality and creativity. Episodes from these seasons are frequently cited as fan favorites. Missing Identity fits this pattern with its clever premise, consistent humor, and satisfying resolution. The animation error doesn't change the episode's place in SpongeBob history as a strong example of what made the show successful. For viewers who hunt for animation errors, finding mistakes like the missing house adds another dimension to watching the show. It becomes a game to spot what's wrong in each episode. Every rewatch might reveal something new. This extends the show's entertainment value beyond just watching the story unfold. Fans can engage with the content on a different level, analyzing the technical aspects of production and sharing discoveries with the community. The missing house error serves as a reminder that cartoons are made by human beings working under real-world constraints. Every episode represents hours of work by dozens of artists, writers, and technicians. They make creative decisions, solve technical problems, and occasionally make mistakes. These mistakes don't erase their achievements. Missing Identity is still a funny, well-crafted episode even with Squidward's house missing from one shot. The error is a footnote in the episode's story, interesting to fans but not damaging to the overall product. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Born Again Krabs, SpongeBob's missing leg. In the SpongeBob SquarePants episode Born Again Krabs, which aired on the 4th of October 2003, a notable animation error occurs during one of the episode's most dramatic moments. When the Flying Dutchman gives Mr. Krabs the choice between SpongeBob or 62 cents, and Mr. Krabs chooses the money, SpongeBob's right leg completely disappears in the next shot. The missing leg happens right after Mr. Krabs makes his selfish decision, creating a visible error during an emotionally important scene. The episode begins on an evening at the Krusty Krab. Squidward switches the open sign to closed, declaring closing time the happiest time of the day. In the kitchen, SpongeBob has the opposite reaction. He's crying and sniffling, calling closing time the saddest time of the day. As he falls to the ground crying, he notices something under the grill. It's an old Krabby Patty stuck to some gum. The patty is cold and hard. SpongeBob realizes this could have rolled under there years ago. He pats it gently and tells it that its journey is almost over. He tosses the patty in the trash. A siren immediately goes off. A fishing line retrieves the patty from the garbage. Mr. Krabs runs in asking what happened. He gasps when he sees someone try to throw away a patty. A device called the Pinch-O-Matic announces it has saved him 5.2 cents. SpongeBob explains he found the patty under the grill. Mr. Krabs responds that tomorrow, a customer will find it under his bun. He hands the disgusting patty back to SpongeBob. SpongeBob protests that it's old and cold and so very full of mold. Mr. Krabs doesn't care. He orders SpongeBob not to make another patty until that one is sold. The next day, SpongeBob puts up an order with the moldy patty on the window. Squidward sarcastically cheers when he sees it. He smells the patty and flips the top bun off. Flies buzz around the stinking patty, which has become what they call the foggy patty. Squidward asks if he can get one with less fog. SpongeBob apologizes and says it's Mr. Krabs' orders. Squidward shrugs and hands the tray to a customer named Gus. Gus sniffs the patty, screams with disgust, and quickly backflips his way out of the restaurant. The scene cuts to Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob, and Squidward standing by the door. Mr. Krabs is confused because they haven't had a customer in weeks. He wonders if it's the new placemats. Squidward sputters in frustration at Krabs' stupidity. He asks if Mr. Krabs has lost his mind. It's not the placemats. It's that old patty he keeps trying to sell to everybody. The patty has gone bad. Mr. Krabs insists this is nonsense and tells SpongeBob to bring the patty to him. When he sees it's in a cage, he asks why. SpongeBob explains it growled at him. The patty has become sentient. It growls and barks like some kind of dog. Squidward hides behind Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs says they would have never lasted in the Navy. He takes the patty out of its cage, but it continues barking and growling in his face. He tells it to stay and throws a treat into its mouth. He pats it gently and declares it good enough to eat. Just as he's about to eat it, an ambulance goes by. He comments on the ambulance, then takes a bite of the patty. The scene suddenly cuts to Mr. Krabs moaning, now green from food poisoning. He's being rolled on a gurney into a hospital. Even while sick, he tells SpongeBob to make sure to wrap up that patty because he's not finished with it yet. The scene cuts to Mr. Krabs in a hospital bed. A purple Dr. Fish tells him he gave them quite a scare. Mr. Krabs asks if he's going to be okay. The doctor says if Mr. Krabs doesn't want to take his word for it, they can check the chart. The doctor looks at the chart and starts shaking. He says it's terrible and drops the clipboard. Mr. Krabs asks if everything is okay. The doctor screams not to touch him and runs out of the room. Mr. Krabs comments that this isn't a good sign. Thunder roars as the room turns green. The Flying Dutchman appears. Mr. Krabs pulls his covers over his head in fear. The Flying Dutchman laughs his evil laugh and declares that Eugene Krabs' time has come. Mr. Krabs panics and says he's not Eugene Krabs. He's Harold Flower, making up the name by looking at the flower vase next to his bed. The Flying Dutchman apologizes and says he must have the wrong room. He flies out and asks a nurse where to find Eugene Krabs. The nurse happily tells him Krabs is in that room right there. The Flying Dutchman points out that's Harold Flower's room. The nurse looks confused by the name Harold Flower. The Flying Dutchman quickly goes back to Mr. Krabs in anger. He asks if Krabs thought he could fool the Flying Dutchman. Mr. Krabs asks what he wants from him. The Flying Dutchman explains he's here to escort Krabs to the resting place of all bad undersea folk, Davy Jones's locker. Mr. Krabs protests that he doesn't have to go there because he's not a bad crab. The Flying Dutchman says being cheap is a terrible thing. Next stop, Davy Jones' locker. The scene cuts to Davy Jones's locker where the Flying Dutchman and Mr. Krabs reappear. Mr. Krabs smells something foul and asks why it smells so bad. The Flying Dutchman explains that Davy Jones works out a lot. These are his socks. He opens the locker to reveal a bunch of smelly gym socks. He tells Mr. Krabs to get in. Mr. Krabs gets on his knees and starts crying. He begs the Flying Dutchman not to make him go in there. He'll do anything. He pleads for another chance. The Flying Dutchman tells him to show a little dignity. Mr. Krabs frantically cries for his mommy. The Flying Dutchman gives in and says he'll give Krabs another chance, but he must always be generous and never cheap. Mr. Krabs gives his word as a sailor. The scene cuts to the Krusty Krab, which now has a sign hanging over it that reads, "Out of business." Squidward is looking through Mr. Krabs' desk drawers, finding nose hair clippers he could use. SpongeBob is wearing his Krusty Krab employee hat and holding his spatula while crying. He tells Squidward he shouldn't be going through Mr. Krabs' belongings because Mr. Krabs won't like it. Squidward reminds SpongeBob what the doctor said. Mr. Krabs isn't coming back. He's trying to open the safe using a stethoscope to hear the tumblers. Mr. Krabs walks in. SpongeBob screams with joy, while Squidward sheepishly hides the stethoscope behind his back. SpongeBob clings to Mr. Krabs happily, saying he knew it. Mr. Krabs is alive. He asks Squidward to look. Squidward responds with deadpan sarcasm. Mr. Krabs explains that being sick made him do a lot of thinking. His whole life has been about money. Saving money, collecting money, touching money, but no more. They're looking at the new, improved, non-cheap Mr. Krabs. The scene cuts to outside the Krusty Krab where a giant grand reopening sign is hanging. Buy and free signs are in the windows. Inside, a giant Celebrate Good Times banner hangs over the main doors. Mr. Krabs welcomes everyone. A little kid named Monroe walks up with a Krabby Patty. Mr. Krabs asks what that means. Monroe says he doesn't go hungry. Mr. Krabs says no, it means free toy. He gives Monroe a toy. Monroe thanks him and says he thought Mr. Krabs was a cheap old tightwad. Mr. Krabs admits he was, but now he's offering free toys for everyone and free refills. Everyone cheers. Mr. Krabs runs up to SpongeBob. A giant Live for Today banner hangs next to the pickup window. He asks where Squidward is. SpongeBob explains Squidward is taking one of those break things in his office, which is now called the Employee Lounge. The scene cuts to Squidward sleeping peacefully in a bed in Mr. Krabs' office. A customer named Martha says she dropped her Krabby Patty and asks for another one. SpongeBob reads the policy written in ketchup on the patty, stating that once the burger reaches the customer, it becomes their responsibility. Mr. Krabs stops him and says that's the old policy. Now SpongeBob should bring out a fresh one. Mr. Krabs apologizes for the confusion and offers Martha a free toy. Squidward greets Mr. Krabs casually. Mr. Krabs asks how the break is coming. Squidward says it should be over in a couple hours and asks Mr. Krabs to have SpongeBob send back a patty and an iced tea. Mr. Krabs tells him to take it easy. Mr. Krabs walks up to a customer named Harold watching a movie on a small television hanging from the ceiling. He asks if Harold is enjoying his in-meal movie. Harold points out the movie hasn't even been in theaters yet. Mr. Krabs says no expense is spared for his valued customers. Outside the restaurant, Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to look at all those happy faces. It feels good to be generous. Squidward walks in with some envelopes containing Mr. Krabs' mail. Mr. Krabs thanks him and comments that Squidward looks rested. Squidward says these naps at work are doing wonders for him. Mr. Krabs opens his credit card bills, expecting bad news. The total is only $10,000. He says that's not so bad, and runs to the cash register to subtract it from today's profit. When he opens the register, it's completely empty. There's no money. He laughs and says how delightful. SpongeBob tells Squidward he's worried about Mr. Krabs. Squidward agrees, but is more concerned about how they're going to get paid. They walk up to Mr. Krabs. Squidward comments that Mr. Krabs is taking total bankruptcy well. Mr. Krabs says it's just a bad dream and he'll wake up soon. Squidward and SpongeBob look at each other surprised. Squidward questions the word dream. Mr. Krabs explains he's sure he's still in the hospital sleeping like a baby. SpongeBob points out he checked out of the hospital that morning. Squidward hands him the hospital bill. Mr. Krabs realizes he's awake and screams in horror. His head cracks through the middle over and over, with a new one appearing each time. Mr. Krabs immediately changes from generous to greedy. He races up to a customer named Nat, drinking a soda and confiscates it, declaring no more refills. He takes it to the soda machine, where the drink gets sucked back in like a vacuum. He runs up to two kids playing with toys and swipes them, calling them freeloaders. He runs to Harold, who's watching the movie, and turns off the TV, calling him a cheapskate. He presses a button that erases Harold's memory of the movie. A customer named Nathiel Waters finds a penny on the ground and comments that it's his lucky day. Mr. Krabs grabs his arm and says his luck just ran out. Nathiel tells him to ease back because he's crushing his arm. Mr. Krabs demands he unhand that penny or the arm comes off. The Flying Dutchman reappears. The customer runs away. The Flying Dutchman says that little display of penny pinching just earned Mr. Krabs a nice spot in Davy Jones's locker for eternity. Mr. Krabs insists he's not cheap, he's generous. Squidward points out he almost tore a man's arm off for a penny. Mr. Krabs sarcastically thanks Squidward, saying he knew he could count on him. The Flying Dutchman picks up Mr. Krabs, who admits a deal's a deal. SpongeBob intervenes, telling them to wait just a burger-flipping second. The Flying Dutchman turns around and asks who dares backsass the Flying Dutchman. SpongeBob identifies himself as SpongeBob Backsass Pants. He says they have the wrong crab. This Mr. Krabs is the most generous, big-hearted, non-skin-flinted crab in the whole sea. The Flying Dutchman responds that Krabs would sell SpongeBob's soul for a couple of bucks. SpongeBob bets his soul that he wouldn't. The Flying Dutchman accepts the bet. He tells Mr. Krabs he'll let him stay, but first he needs help settling a bet. If Mr. Krabs had to choose between SpongeBob and all the money the Flying Dutchman has in his pocket, which would he take? Mr. Krabs asks how much money they're talking about. SpongeBob reacts with shock. The Flying Dutchman shows some coins and says 62 cents. Mr. Krabs says he'll take the money. SpongeBob is shocked again. The Flying Dutchman gives Mr. Krabs the 62 cents and picks up SpongeBob. This is the moment when the animation error occurs. In the next shot, showing SpongeBob after Mr. Krabs makes his choice, SpongeBob's right leg is completely missing from his body. The error happens during this crucial scene where SpongeBob realizes his boss just sold him out for pocket change. The missing leg is visible enough that viewers who pay attention to character details can spot it. The Flying Dutchman announces the next stop is Davy Jones' locker. SpongeBob screams as they both disappear. Mr. Krabs runs to Squidward, happy about the money. Squidward can't believe he's saying this, but he asks how Mr. Krabs could trade SpongeBob for 62 cents. Mr. Krabs asks if Squidward thinks he could have gotten more. Squidward points out that SpongeBob stuck up for him, and Mr. Krabs sold him out. He should be ashamed of himself. Mr. Krabs looks at his change sadly until he starts to cry. He asks what he has done. He wants another chance. He didn't learn anything. He lost his best fry cook. He doesn't want this foul money. He throws the change on the ground and says he wants SpongeBob back. The Flying Dutchman reappears and drops SpongeBob on the floor, telling Mr. Krabs to take him back. Mr. Krabs asks if he heard what he said about the money. The Flying Dutchman says he couldn't hear himself think with SpongeBob around. He only had him for 30 seconds. The scene cuts to show SpongeBob and the Flying Dutchman at Davy Jones's locker, with SpongeBob talking constantly about jellyfishing and Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. The Flying Dutchman explains that not giving SpongeBob back would be a fate worse than death. SpongeBob is Mr. Krabs' problem now. Mr. Krabs tries to apologize about trading SpongeBob for pocket change. SpongeBob stops him and says, Mr. Krabs did it for the Krusty Krab. He would have done the same thing. Mr. Krabs asks if he really would have. SpongeBob simply says no. Everyone laughs. The scene cuts to the Flying Dutchman sitting at home reading a book when the phone rings. He answers, and it's SpongeBob on the other end talking super quickly about hanging out and listing all the days of the week that work for him. He mentions his best friend Patrick is pink. The Flying Dutchman groans as the episode ends. The animation error with SpongeBob's missing leg happens at a pivotal moment in the episode. This is the scene where Mr. Krabs reveals his true nature by choosing money over his loyal employee. SpongeBob has just defended Mr. Krabs, betting his own soul that his boss wouldn't sell him out. When the Flying Dutchman offers the test, SpongeBob watches in horror as Mr. Krabs picks 62 cents over him. The missing leg occurs in the shot right after this devastating choice, adding an unintended visual distraction to an already intense moment. Animation errors like missing limbs typically happen during the production process when different artists work on different elements of a scene. Character models need to be drawn completely in each frame, and missing a body part usually indicates someone forgot to include that layer or element during the animation process. With SpongeBob's simple character design featuring 2 legs, 2 arms, and a square body, missing an entire leg is particularly noticeable. Born Again Krabs is notable for its darker themes compared to typical SpongeBob episodes. The episode deals with Mr. Krabs literally dying from food poisoning and being judged for his sins. The Flying Dutchman represents a supernatural force holding Mr. Krabs accountable for his greed. The episode explores whether someone can truly change their fundamental nature. Mr. Krabs promises to be generous, succeeds briefly, but ultimately returns to his cheap ways when faced with financial loss. The climax reveals that his greed extends even to selling SpongeBob for almost nothing. The missing leg error exists in the context of an episode that's otherwise well regarded by fans. The writing effectively balances humor with genuine emotional stakes. The sentient moldy patty barking like a dog provides physical comedy. Mr. Krabs' failed attempt to pretend his name is Harold Flower creates a funny moment. SpongeBob's non-stop talking, driving the Flying Dutchman crazy, delivers a perfect ending. These comedy elements surround the more serious question of whether Mr. Krabs values money more than the people in his life. The episode's message is surprisingly dark for a children's cartoon. Mr. Krabs literally chooses money over SpongeBob's life. Even though the Flying Dutchman returns SpongeBob, the damage is done. SpongeBob knows his boss would sell him for pocket change. The final scene where SpongeBob says he wouldn't have done the same thing carries weight. Despite the laugh track playing, the episode established that Mr. Krabs failed a basic test of friendship and loyalty. The animation error doesn't change this message, but it does create a momentary distraction. Viewers focused on the emotional impact of Mr. Krabs' betrayal might notice that SpongeBob is literally falling apart in the frame. The missing leg could be read as symbolic of SpongeBob being incomplete or broken by his boss's choice, though this is almost certainly accidental rather than intentional artistic choice. Production of animated television shows involves tight deadlines and multiple people working on different aspects simultaneously. Each episode contains thousands of individual drawings or digital frames. Artists create character models, background artists design settings, colorists apply colors, and animators bring everything to life. Quality control teams review episodes before broadcast, but with so many elements to check, small errors can slip through. A missing leg in one shot among hundreds might not get caught if reviewers are focused on other aspects like dialogue timing, scene transitions, or overall story flow. The error has been documented by SpongeBob fans on various websites dedicated to cataloging mistakes in the series. Encyclopedia SpongeBobia lists it in their episode information. MovieMistakes.com includes it in their SpongeBob entry. Fan communities discuss these errors as part of their engagement with the show. Finding mistakes becomes a way to interact with content beyond just watching passively. Dedicated fans rewatch episodes specifically to spot errors, comparing notes with other viewers, and building collective knowledge about the show's production. Born Again Krabs aired during Season 3, which many fans consider part of SpongeBob's golden age. Episodes from this period are frequently cited as examples of the show's best writing and most creative storytelling. The episode's willingness to explore darker themes while maintaining humor demonstrates the show's range. It can be silly with the barking patty, while also being genuinely dramatic with Mr. Krabs' moral test. The missing leg error serves as evidence of the show's production realities. Even beloved episodes from celebrated seasons contain imperfections. The error doesn't reduce the episode's quality or impact. It exists as a minor visual flaw in an otherwise strong episode. For most viewers watching once, the error goes unnoticed. The story, dialogue, and emotional beats carry the episode effectively regardless of the missing leg. For animation enthusiasts, errors like this provide insight into how cartoons are made. They reveal the human element behind the production. Real artists working under real deadlines made this episode. They created compelling characters, funny jokes, and meaningful stories, while also occasionally forgetting to draw SpongeBob's right leg in one shot. These mistakes make the show more human rather than less impressive. The achievement is creating hundreds of episodes with relatively few noticeable errors, given the complexity of animation production. The episode's legacy extends beyond the animation error. Born Again Krabs is remembered for its story about greed versus generosity, its dark humor involving death and supernatural punishment, and its surprisingly emotional climax where Mr. Krabs chooses money over friendship. The missing leg exists as a footnote in fan discussions, interesting to those who notice it, but not central to why people remember and discuss the episode. SpongeBob's character design, with his simple geometric shape and 4 limbs, makes missing limbs particularly noticeable when they occur. Unlike more complex characters with elaborate costumes or accessories that might hide errors, SpongeBob's minimalist design means every element needs to be present for the character to look complete. A missing leg creates an obvious visual gap that stands out to viewers familiar with how SpongeBob should appear. The error demonstrates how even simple character designs require careful attention during animation. Each frame needs someone to ensure all body parts are included and properly positioned. Digital animation software can help by maintaining character models across frames, but errors still occur when artists modify scenes or when files don't sync properly. The missing leg suggests something went wrong during this particular shot's production, whether due to a technical glitch, artist oversight, or some other production issue. Born Again Krabs remains a significant episode in SpongeBob history despite the animation error. Its exploration of Mr. Krabs' character, its supernatural elements with the Flying Dutchman, and its emotional stakes make it memorable. The missing leg error adds a layer of trivia for dedicated fans who study the show closely, but it doesn't define the episode's place in the series. The episode succeeds at telling an engaging story about greed, redemption, and the true test of friendship, even with SpongeBob missing a leg in one critical shot. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy V, the spelling error. In the SpongeBob SquarePants episode Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5, which aired on the 1st of June 2002, a spelling error appears on screen during a news broadcast. When the TV displays the acronym EVIL, which stands for Every Villain is Lemons, the word villain is misspelled as villian with an extra I. This error appears on the television screen for viewers to see clearly, making it one of the most documented text-based mistakes in SpongeBob history. The episode focuses on Barnacle Boy becoming frustrated with how Mermaid Man treats him like a child. After ordering a Krabby Patty at the Krusty Krab, Barnacle Boy asks for the adult-sized meal. When told he's too young, he gets angry and decides to turn evil. He declares he's crossing over to the dark side and changes his name from Barnacle Boy to Barnacle Man. He joins forces with other villains to form the evil organization EVIL. The spelling error occurs during a news broadcast where the realistic fish head announces breaking news about this new villainous alliance. The television screen displays the acronym and what it stands for. Every villain is lemons. But in this graphic, the word villain contains an extra letter, spelling it as villian instead. The misspelling is visible on screen long enough for viewers who pay attention to notice the mistake. EVIL consists of three main villains in this episode. Barnacle Boy leads the group after his turn to evil. Man Ray, the arch nemesis of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy from previous episodes, joins the team. The Dirty Bubble, another recurring villain known for trapping victims inside his bubble body, completes the trio. These three villains band together to cause trouble in Bikini Bottom and specifically target Mermaid Man. The group's name, Every Villain is Lemons, is intentionally silly and absurd. It's a parody of how superhero stories often give villain organizations dramatic names with forced acronyms. The name doesn't make logical sense, because calling villains lemons is an unusual choice. In slang, calling something a lemon typically refers to a defective product, especially a car that breaks down frequently. Applying this term to villains creates humor through the absurdity of the name choice. The spelling error happens in the production process when someone creates the graphic for the news broadcast. Text graphics require someone to type out the words that will appear on screen. In this case, whoever created the EVIL graphic either typed the word incorrectly or didn't catch the spelling mistake during review. The error made it through all stages of production and into the final broadcast. Spelling villain incorrectly is a common mistake. The word follows an unusual pattern where two L's come before the A, but only one I appears after it. Many people instinctively want to double the I to match the doubled L, creating villian instead of the correct villain. This type of error appears frequently in everyday writing, making it somewhat understandable that it could slip into a professional production. However, the error is particularly noticeable because it appears as a graphic on screen rather than being spoken dialogue. When characters speak, viewers don't see the spelling of words. But when text appears on screen, every letter is visible and can be scrutinized. The EVIL acronym graphic stays on screen long enough for viewers to read it, giving them time to spot the misspelling. The episode itself is considered one of the better Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes. The premise of Barnacle Boy turning evil out of frustration provides good comedy and character development. His complaints about being treated like a child, despite being elderly himself, create humor through the absurdity of the situation. The episode explores the dynamic between Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, showing the strain in their partnership. Since Mermaid Man can't defeat EVIL alone, he recruits SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, and Squidward to form a new superhero team. They become the International Justice League of Super Acquaintances, or JLSA. Each character gets a superhero identity with special powers. SpongeBob becomes the Quickster with super speed. Patrick becomes the Elastic Waistband with stretching abilities. Sandy becomes Miss Appear with invisibility powers. Squidward becomes Captain Magma, who can shoot lava. The superhero team faces off against EVIL at Makeout Reef, where the villains are harassing teenagers by shining flashlights on their parked cars. The battle doesn't go well for the heroes. Despite having various superpowers, they defeat themselves through incompetence and poor coordination. The Quickster accidentally creates a tornado that sucks in the Elastic Waistband. Captain Magma shoots lava that hits the Quickster instead of the villains. Miss Appear gets run over by a car. The real resolution comes when the villains realize they're after the Krabby Patty secret formula, which is Plankton's scheme rather than a genuine evil plan. The various villains have different goals and priorities. When they recognize the mission serves Plankton's interests rather than true villainy, tensions arise. Eventually, Barnacle Boy reconciles with Mermaid Man and returns to being a hero. The spelling error doesn't affect the story in any way. The plot continues regardless of whether villain is spelled correctly or incorrectly on the news broadcast graphic. Most viewers watching the episode focus on the action, dialogue, and jokes rather than carefully reading every word that appears on screen. The error exists as a background detail that only becomes significant when fans specifically look for mistakes. SpongeBob fans discovered the spelling error and documented it across various platforms. Encyclopedia SpongeBobia lists it in the episode's trivia section. IMDb's Goofs page for the episode includes the misspelling. Fan forums and social media posts have discussed the error. Some fans create compilations of SpongeBob mistakes, and this spelling error frequently appears in those lists. The error demonstrates the challenges of television production. Every episode contains hundreds of individual elements that need to be created, reviewed, and assembled. Graphics like the EVIL. Broadcast requires someone to design them, someone to type the text, and someone to review the final product. With tight production schedules and deadlines, mistakes can slip through even with multiple people checking the work. Text-based errors are particularly interesting because they're permanent and clearly visible. Unlike animation errors where a character might be the wrong color for a single frame, text stays on screen exactly as typed. There's no ambiguity about whether it's an error. The word is either spelled correctly or incorrectly. In this case, Villian is definitively wrong, making it an undeniable mistake rather than a subjective interpretation. The episode aired during Season 3, which ran from 2001 to 2004. This period is often considered part of SpongeBob's golden age, when the show was producing some of its most creative and well-regarded episodes. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy V fits this pattern with its strong comedy, character development, and memorable moments. The spelling error is a minor flaw in an otherwise solid episode. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are beloved recurring characters in the SpongeBob universe. They parody classic superhero duos, particularly Batman and Robin. The characters are elderly superheroes living in a retirement home, which creates humor through the contrast between their heroic personas and their old age. They struggle with failing memory, physical limitations, and confusion, making them simultaneously heroic and helpless. The show had previously established EVIL in earlier material, but this episode brings the villain organization to the forefront of the plot. The acronym itself is memorable because of its absurd meaning. Every villain is lemons doesn't make sense as a phrase, which is exactly why it's funny. The spelling error adds an unintended layer of humor because it makes the villains appear even less competent if they can't spell their own organization's name correctly. Some fans have speculated whether the spelling error was intentional. Could the show's creators have deliberately misspelled villain as a joke about the villains being incompetent? This seems unlikely because the error isn't acknowledged or referenced in the episode. Characters don't comment on the misspelling. There's no visual gag drawing attention to it. The error simply exists without any indication it's meant to be noticed. If the misspelling were intentional, the show would likely make it more obvious through some form of acknowledgement. SpongeBob frequently breaks the fourth wall and comments on visual gags. Characters often point out absurd elements happening on screen. The fact that nobody mentions the spelling mistake suggests it's genuinely an error rather than a deliberate joke. The error also appears in a serious context within the episode. The news broadcast treats EVIL as a genuine threat to Bikini Bottom. The realistic fish head delivers the information in his typical newscaster voice without any indication the organization's name contains errors. If the misspelling were part of the joke, the broadcast would likely play it for laughs rather than presenting it straight. Television animation in the early 2000s involved multiple stages of production. Artists created storyboards, backgrounds, and character animation. Sound designers added dialogue and effects. Editors assembled everything into the final episode. Graphics like the EVIL broadcast required additional specialized work. Someone needed to create the news broadcast graphics separately from the main animation. Creating text graphics involves choosing fonts, colors, layouts, and typing out the actual words that will appear. In this case, whoever created the graphic typed Villian instead of villain. The mistake then needed to pass through several review stages without being caught. Storyboard artists, directors, editors, and quality control teams all presumably saw the graphic during production without noticing the error. The fact that the error made it to broadcast demonstrates how easy it is for small mistakes to slip through, even with multiple people reviewing the work. Everyone looking at the graphic might focus on different aspects. One person checks if the graphic fits the scene timing. Another verifies the colors match the show's style. Someone else ensures the text is readable. In the process of checking various technical elements, the actual spelling might not receive close scrutiny. Modern animation production uses digital tools that include spell check features. Software can automatically flag misspelled words, making text errors less common than they once were. However, spell check isn't perfect. Custom words, names, and acronyms might not appear in standard dictionaries. Additionally, if someone adds text as part of an image rather than editable text, spell check won't detect errors. The EVIL spelling error has become part of SpongeBob trivia. Fans who know about the mistake look for it when rewatching the episode. It's become one of those details that dedicated viewers share with others. Finding the error makes fans feel like they're part of an informed community who knows the show's secrets and hidden details. The episode's legacy extends beyond the spelling error. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy V is remembered for Barnacle Boy's turn to evil, the formation of the superhero team, and the various comedy sequences. The spelling error is a footnote in the episode's history rather than its defining feature. Most people remember the episode for its story and jokes rather than the text mistake. Barnacle Boy's frustration with being called boy despite being elderly is one of the episode's running jokes. Throughout the episode, he complains about Mermaid Man treating him like a child. This frustration drives his decision to turn evil. When he finally returns to being a hero at the end, Mermaid Man still calls him Barnacle Boy, suggesting the underlying issue remains unresolved. The episode uses this dynamic for both humor and slight character depth. The superhero team formation parodies the Justice League and other superhero team-ups. Each character gets a dramatic introduction with their superhero name and powers. The scene plays these introductions seriously before undermining them by showing how poorly the heroes work together. The contrast between the dramatic setup and the comedic payoff creates effective humor. The Makeout Reef battle showcases physical comedy as the heroes accidentally attack each other. The Quickster runs in circles, screaming while on fire. The elastic waistband gets stretched and tangled. Captain Magma accidentally shoots his teammates. Miss Appear becomes invisible, but then gets hit by a car because nobody can see her. The sequence demonstrates that having superpowers doesn't automatically make someone a good hero. The episode ends with Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy successfully defeating SpongeBob and Patrick not through combat but by summoning elderly people from the retirement home. The old people carry torches and pitchforks, creating a humorous image of geriatric mob justice. This resolution fits the episode's theme that Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, despite their age, can still be heroes when working together. The spelling error in the EVIL broadcast serves as a reminder that every television show contains imperfections. Even successful, beloved shows like SpongeBob have mistakes in their episodes. These errors don't diminish the show's quality or the work of the talented people who created it. They simply demonstrate that animation production is a complex process where small mistakes can occur despite everyone's best efforts. For fans who enjoy hunting for errors and Easter eggs, the EVIL spelling mistake provides satisfaction when discovered. It's the kind of detail that requires pausing the video and carefully reading the text on screen. Finding it gives viewers a sense of accomplishment and demonstrates their attention to detail. The error has become part of the show's lore, discussed in fan communities and trivia collections. The episode's title, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy V, indicates it's the 5th major episode featuring these characters. The show had established Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy as popular recurring characters through previous episodes. Each appearance explores different aspects of their superhero personas and their relationship. This episode stands out by having Barnacle Boy temporarily become a villain, adding a new dimension to his character. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy V successfully balances humor with superhero story elements. It parodies superhero team-ups while telling an entertaining story about friendship and respect. The episode makes jokes about superhero conventions while also playing certain moments straight. This balance makes the episode work for both children who enjoy the slapstick comedy and adults who appreciate the superhero parody. The spelling error doesn't change any of this. Whether villain is spelled correctly or incorrectly doesn't affect the episode's jokes, story, or entertainment value. The error exists as a curiosity for fans who notice it, but the episode succeeds or fails based on its writing, animation, and humor, rather than the correctness of one word in a background graphic. The EVIL misspelling stands as one of the most straightforward errors in SpongeBob history. There's no debate about whether it's a mistake. The word is simply spelled wrong. This clarity makes it a perfect example to include in lists of SpongeBob errors. Unlike animation mistakes that might only last one frame or could be explained away, this spelling error is undeniably present and incorrect. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy V remains a fan-favorite episode despite the spelling error. The episode's strengths far outweigh this minor textual mistake. It's funny, creative, and expands on beloved characters. The spelling error adds a small piece of trivia for dedicated fans without diminishing what makes the episode enjoyable. Most viewers watching the episode focus on the entertainment rather than checking every word's spelling, allowing them to enjoy the story without distraction. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Pressure Sandy's teleportation. In the SpongeBob SquarePants episode Pressure, which aired on the 12th of May, 2001, a noticeable animation error occurs when Sandy enters the Krusty Krab during a race with SpongeBob. Sandy is clearly shown running in through the front door of the restaurant, but within the same exact shot, she suddenly appears running in from the right side of the Krusty Krab, where no door exists. This spatial impossibility makes it look like Sandy teleported or phased through a wall, creating one of the more obvious continuity errors in the series. The episode centers on a debate between Sandy and SpongeBob about whether land creatures or sea creatures are superior. The conflict begins peacefully. Sandy and SpongeBob are relaxing and watching clouds roll by. SpongeBob comments that one cloud looks like a flower. Sandy points out they all look like flowers. They're both enjoying the peaceful moment when Sandy mentions she would normally offer to race SpongeBob to the top of the coral cliffs, but she doesn't want to miss the beautiful scenery. SpongeBob agrees, asking who wants to get all dirty and sweaty anyway. Sandy comments that she thinks they'd know who would get to the top first. SpongeBob agrees. They both say me at the same time and laugh. SpongeBob finds this funny because it sounded like Sandy said she could beat him in a climbing contest. Sandy insists she can because she's a squirrel, pointing to her acorn patch. SpongeBob thought that meant she was nuts. Sandy explains it means she's a natural-born climber from the surface world, and nothing prepares you for climbing like growing up on good old dry land. SpongeBob laughs and dismisses land as unimportant. He claims it's all about finger strength, and if there's anything they have plenty of underwater, it's finger strength. His fingers flex to demonstrate. He calls Sandy Miss Mittens as a challenge. Sandy responds that she's already halfway there and starts climbing. SpongeBob yells that it's not fair because Sandy got a head start. Sandy apologizes and says that's the way the coral crumbles, then collapses the rock SpongeBob is climbing on. SpongeBob accuses her of doing that on purpose. Sandy admits she did, but claims her next action is an accident as she unleashes more rocks at him. SpongeBob screams and dodges. Sandy taunts him about forgetting his umbrella. SpongeBob reveals he has an umbrella and uses it to float up to the top of the cliff. When he reaches the summit, Sandy is already there, sitting in a lounge chair reading a newspaper. She comments that it's about time he showed up. SpongeBob is confused because he saw her climbing below. He demands a rematch. First one to the Krusty Krab wins. Sandy declares that no sea critter can run faster than a land critter. SpongeBob claims he can underwater because he's hydrodynamically designed. He asks if Sandy thinks she can win a fair race in that clunky tin tube, referring to her air suit. Sandy tells him to ask her behind if he can catch it. She calls him Hydropants. SpongeBob responds that he's already halfway there. The camera zooms out to reveal a record player making the phrase halfway there repeat 3 more times. Sandy gasps at the trick. SpongeBob is running at the bottom of the mountain, laughing, when he hits a brick wall. Sandy jumps on SpongeBob's face and uses him as a springboard to leap over the wall. She thanks him for the facelift and runs into the Krusty Krab laughing. This is where the animation error occurs. The visual shows Sandy running in through the front door of the Krusty Krab. However, in the same continuous shot without any cuts, Sandy then appears to be entering from the right side of the building where there is no door. The error happens so quickly that it creates a jarring spatial inconsistency. Sandy seems to teleport from one entrance to another within the same moment. Sandy starts to gloat that SpongeBob didn't have a chance, but SpongeBob is already inside dressed as an old man. He comments that it's just like a land creature to keep a sea creature waiting. He loses his beard and cane disguise and laughs. Sandy points out she thought he wanted a rematch. SpongeBob admits he did and took a head start just like Sandy did. Sandy explains she was just having fun with him that time, but she guesses all underwater folk don't have to play fair. SpongeBob agrees they don't, calling her an air breather. Sandy calls him a water sucker. SpongeBob calls her a tree climber. Sandy calls him a Gulf streamer. SpongeBob calls her a kite flyer. Sandy calls him a chum chewer. SpongeBob gasps and tells her to take that back, then nervously calls her a not wet person. Sandy declares victory because SpongeBob can't even come up with another name. That proves it. SpongeBob asks what it proves. Sandy says it proves that land critters are better than sea critters. Patrick arrives and asks better at what. Sandy lists various activities, including cattle roping, pie eating, wood chopping, and flying. Squidward appears and asks what she's blabbering about. Patrick explains she says land creatures are best. Sandy insists it's only because it's true. They're best at horse riding, fur styling, and rowing. She admits sea creatures have them beat at swimming, but land creatures are better at corn shucking, hay baling, barn raising, and fishing. SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs all gasp at the mention of fishing. Sandy adds that land creatures are definitely better at name-calling too. Squidward points out that land creatures are also better at drowning. SpongeBob laughs and calls it a good one, jumping to high-five Squidward. He freezes in midair, waiting for the high-five. Squidward refuses and tells him not on his life. SpongeBob falls. He admits Sandy has some pretty good moves for a squirrel, and everyone starts laughing until he signals them to stop. But she's still just a land creature. Sandy insists squirrels can do anything they want to. Patrick bets they can't eat a Krabby Double Deluxe in one bite. He demonstrates by gulping down a huge patty. Sandy reaches off-screen for the same big patty and says they don't call her cheeks for nothing. She tries to eat it, but it splatters on her air helmet. Everyone except Sandy and Patrick laughs. Patrick thanks them for their appreciation. Sandy says that's just one thing. Mr. Krabs asks if she can pop her eye stalks in and out of her head like everyone in his family can do. Sandy tries, but can't. Squidward asks if she can balance 5 spinning plates on sticks using tentacles. SpongeBob asks if she can reproduce by budding and begins demonstrating. Most importantly, he asks if she can do what they all do next. Everyone except Sandy makes their eyes big and round and gasps 3 times without releasing any breath. Sandy asks why she would want to do any of that dumb stuff anyway. SpongeBob tells her to admit that she can't do anything sea creatures can do. In fact, if it wasn't for her suit, she couldn't even live down here. Everyone except Sandy starts laughing. Sandy tries to protest, but they keep laughing harder. She grows angry and declares she'll show them. She doesn't need her suit and rips it off. Everyone gasps. She says she doesn't need her helmet either and throws it to the ground, releasing an air bubble. Mr. Krabs invokes Neptune to preserve her. Squidward asks how long she can stay like that. SpongeBob says he doesn't know. Patrick asks if Sandy is a girl. SpongeBob comments that Sandy sure proved them wrong. He guesses land creatures are better, at least until they need to breathe. Bubbles rise from Sandy's lips. He and the others chuckle while Sandy angrily squints at them. It won't be long now. Sandy starts struggling to hold her breath. SpongeBob asks if she's feeling lightheaded yet. Sandy shakes her head no. SpongeBob reminds her about breathing by taking a deep breath in and out. Sandy is seen sweating profusely. Mr. Krabs comments that air is free and also takes a deep breath. Sandy's face turns red as she starts to suffocate. An X-ray shows her lungs shriveling up, with her left lung breaking from her windpipe and falling. She gasps and inhales a large amount of water. Sandy looks around in panic and runs to the counter, where she quickly digs through multiple objects. She eventually puts her head into a pickle jar and breathes heavily. Everyone starts laughing. Sandy yells at them to stop laughing at her. Mr. Krabs says he knew it. There was no way some airhead was going to win anything against a water breather. Patrick laughs at the word airhead, causing the top of his head to deflate like a balloon. He puts his thumb in his mouth and blows to reinflate it. SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs chant that sea creatures rule and chant water repeatedly. Sandy tells them they had their little laugh, but now it's her turn. They think they're such hot stuff swimming around with their fancy gills, but none of them wet heads would last a minute on her turf, dry land. Squidward asks if they have to wear pickle jars. Everyone except Sandy laughs. Sandy says nope, nothing but the clothes on their backs. SpongeBob declares 1 minute is no problem and calls her Landy. Everyone except Sandy laughs. Sandy leads them to an island rising out of the water from the seafloor. When they see the island, they stop laughing. Sandy asks if they're going or not. They all stammer and make excuses. SpongeBob says actually they can't because they're late for something. Patrick says they're fitting. Sandy asks if he means for their chicken costumes. Patrick insists they're not chicken while holding and eating popcorn. He drops his popcorn and starts pecking at it like a chicken. SpongeBob agrees they're not chicken and they'll do it. He looks at the water's surface and pokes his finger above water briefly, declaring mission accomplished. Sandy points out that unless they can stay above water for 1 measly minute, they forfeit the contest and prove that land creatures are better than sea creatures. SpongeBob insists they can take on the challenge. Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs agree. SpongeBob says they're not afraid of dumb old land. They agree again. SpongeBob declares they're sea creatures, and they all cheer. SpongeBob says this is it. Mr. Krabs stops him and gives him a glass of water, telling him to make it last. SpongeBob drinks from it and thanks Mr. Krabs. The scene changes to live action as SpongeBob emerges from the water. He's now a real yellow kitchen sponge on a stick. He comments that this isn't so bad and they can do this. He calls for Patrick to come up, saying the air is fine. Patrick announces he's going to do it quick and get it over with. He cannonballs out of the water and appears as a real pink starfish, missing his trunks on a stick. He notices he lost his trunks and greets SpongeBob. SpongeBob congratulates Patrick for making it and calls for Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs announces all ashore that's going ashore and runs up. He appears as a red rubber toy crab on a stick. SpongeBob says he's looking good. Patrick cheers. SpongeBob calls for Squidward, saying he's missing all the dry. They all chant Squidward's name. Squidward says he'll do it, but he won't like it. He walks up and appears as a puppet octopus with his eyes and big nose. SpongeBob comments that here they are as all four walk on the island. Squidward says this is pretty easy. Patrick considers keeping a second rock up here. Mr. Krabs says once you get your land legs, it's not so bad. SpongeBob declares they're masters of land and sea. A string puppet seagull lands in front of them. SpongeBob greets it as a local and introduces them as being from underwater. He asks if the seagull knows Sandy Cheeks. Sandy counts down from 3 to 1 and comments that she should tan her fur because they made it. She decides to go congratulate them. She walks onto the island, now appearing as a real plush squirrel toy with a small round plastic helmet. She calls for SpongeBob and Patrick, wondering where those critters got to. She sees seagulls attacking all four of them. One tries to eat Patrick while another chases SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs, and Squidward. Sandy gasps and yells that the seagulls can't eat her friends. She calls them rats with wings and attacks them off screen. Feathers start flying. All five sink back down to the seabed with Squidward upside down. SpongeBob thanks Sandy for saving them. Sandy says everyone's best at something. SpongeBob adds that no one's best at everything. He apologizes for making her take off her helmet. Sandy apologizes for making him go up on dry land. Mr. Krabs suggests 3 cheers for feeling sorry for themselves. They all cheer hip hip hooray 3 times. The final hooray comes from the seagulls lying injured on the island with their feathers missing. The episode ends. The animation error with Sandy's entrance to the Krusty Krab stands out because it violates basic spatial logic. Buildings have specific entrances in specific locations. The Krusty Krab's layout is well established throughout the series. The front door is clearly defined, and the right side of the building doesn't have an entrance. For Sandy to enter through the front door and then appear entering from the right side in the same continuous shot creates an impossible scenario. This type of error typically happens when different animators work on different parts of a scene without proper coordination. One animator might draw Sandy entering through the front door based on the storyboard instructions. Another animator working on the next part of the scene might position Sandy coming from a different direction. When these elements get combined in the final edit, the result is a character appearing to be in 2 places at once or moving between locations instantaneously. The error is particularly noticeable because it happens in a single shot without any cuts. If there were a scene transition or camera cut between Sandy entering through the front door and appearing from the side, viewers might not notice the inconsistency. But because it occurs in one continuous shot, the spatial impossibility becomes obvious. Sandy seems to phase through the building or teleport from one entrance to another. Pressure is remembered for several reasons beyond this animation error. The episode features one of the most unique visual sequences in SpongeBob history with the live-action segment on the island. Seeing the characters as real objects, SpongeBob as an actual kitchen sponge, Patrick as a real starfish, Mr. Krabs as a toy crab, and Squidward as a puppet creates a surreal and memorable moment. This creative choice demonstrates the show's willingness to experiment with different visual styles. The episode also explores themes of prejudice and competition between groups. Sandy and SpongeBob's argument about whether land or sea creatures are superior parallels real-world debates about superiority between different groups. The episode ultimately resolves with the message that everyone is best at something, but no one is best at everything. This moral about appreciating different strengths and abilities gives the episode substance beyond just comedy. The animation error doesn't affect this message or the episode's overall quality. The story about competition, pride, and mutual respect works regardless of whether Sandy enters the Krusty Krab correctly. Most viewers watching casually wouldn't notice the spatial inconsistency because the scene moves quickly and focuses attention on the characters' dialogue and actions, rather than the specific details of how Sandy enters the building. For animation enthusiasts and dedicated fans, errors like Sandy's teleportation provide interesting insights into production challenges. Maintaining spatial continuity across different shots and scenes requires careful coordination. Storyboard artists plan where characters will be positioned. Background artists create the settings. Character animators draw the movements. All these elements must align correctly in the final product. When communication breaks down or details get overlooked, inconsistencies emerge. The Krusty Krab appears in hundreds of SpongeBob episodes, making its layout one of the most familiar locations in the show. Fans know exactly where the doors are, where the kitchen is located, where the cash register sits, and how the dining area is arranged. This familiarity makes errors involving the Krusty Krab more noticeable. When something appears in the wrong place or a character enters from an impossible direction, it stands out precisely because viewers know how things should look. The error has been documented by fans across various platforms. Encyclopedia SpongeBobia mentions it in their episode information. Screen Rant included it in articles about SpongeBob animation mistakes. Fan discussions on forums and social media have pointed out the spatial impossibility of Sandy's entrance. These conversations demonstrate how closely fans watch and analyze their favorite shows, noticing details that casual viewers might miss. Pressure aired during Season 2, which ran from 2000 to 2001. This period established many of SpongeBob's recurring elements and solidified the show's identity. Episodes from Season 2 are generally well regarded for their creativity and humor. Pressure fits this pattern with its unique premise, memorable live-action sequence, and character-driven comedy. The animation error is a minor blemish on an otherwise strong episode. The episode's resolution, with everyone feeling sorry for themselves, provides an unconventional ending. Rather than one side winning the competition or both sides learning to appreciate each other equally, everyone ends up defeated by the seagulls. Sandy had to rescue her friends from the birds, and everyone returns underwater, somewhat humiliated. The final image of the injured featherless seagulls weakly saying, "Hooray," adds dark comedy to the conclusion. Sandy's character shines throughout the episode despite the animation error during her entrance. Her pride in being from the surface drives the conflict. Her competitive nature pushes the challenges forward. Her willingness to risk her safety by removing her suit and helmet demonstrates her commitment to proving her point. Her ultimately saving everyone shows that despite the competition and arguing, friendship matters more than proving superiority. The animation error serves as a reminder that even beloved, successful shows have imperfections. SpongeBob SquarePants became one of the most popular and longest-running animated series, despite containing numerous animation mistakes across its many episodes. The show's success comes from strong writing, memorable characters, creative premises, and consistent humor rather than technical perfection. For viewers who notice the error, it becomes part of the episode's identity. Pressure is the episode with the live-action segment, the debate about land versus sea creatures, and that weird moment where Sandy teleports into the Krusty Krab. The error doesn't ruin the episode, but adds a layer of trivia for dedicated fans to discuss and share. The teleportation error stands as one of the more obvious spatial continuity mistakes in SpongeBob. Unlike color errors that might only last a frame, or missing objects that could be explained away, this error clearly shows a character in two different locations within the same shot. There's no ambiguity about whether it's a mistake. The spatial impossibility is undeniable, making it a perfect example for anyone studying animation errors or discussing the technical challenges of cartoon production. Pressure remains an important episode in SpongeBob history, despite the animation error. Its unique visual style, character development, and thematic content make it memorable. The error exists as a documented fact in the fan community, interesting to those who notice it, but not central to why people remember and appreciate the episode. The story about competition, pride, friendship, and mutual respect succeeds regardless of Sandy's impossible entrance into the Krusty Krab. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Gary Takes a Bath, the disappearing ladder. In the SpongeBob SquarePants episode Gary Takes a Bath, which aired on the 26th of July 2003, a continuity error occurs involving a ladder that mysteriously disappears. When SpongeBob is stuck in a tree trying to get Gary to take a bath, Gary removes the ladder and drops it behind him. The ladder can still be seen behind Gary in the next two shots, but then it completely vanishes in all the following shots without explanation. This disappearing object error is one of the more noticeable continuity mistakes in the series. The episode focuses entirely on SpongeBob's increasingly desperate attempts to get Gary to take his weekly bath. The story begins at SpongeBob's house when his clock shows 5 p.m. and sounds an alarm. SpongeBob announces it's that time of week again, bath time. Gary's pupils dilate in fear. SpongeBob tells Gary to come along so they can get the water started. He walks to the bathroom, but Gary doesn't follow. SpongeBob walks back and tells Gary he's going to have to get in that tub. SpongeBob warns Gary they can do this the hard way, or the easy way, or the medium way. He continues listing increasingly absurd options, including the semi-medium, easy, hard way, and the sorta hard with a touch of awkward, easy, difficulty, challenging way. The camera zooms in on Gary's eyes as he just stares. SpongeBob asks if that's how Gary wants to play it. The episode then shows a series of elaborate schemes SpongeBob uses to try getting Gary into the bath. First, he tries a new boomerang pet ball toy. He tells Gary to fetch and throws the ball. The toy boomerangs back to SpongeBob instead of going to Gary. He reads the box, which says new boomerang pet ball. Really works. He throws the box, but it also boomerangs back and hits him in the head. Next, SpongeBob appears with a bomb strapped to his chest. He tells Gary the bomb will explode in 3 seconds unless Gary takes a bath. He begs, but Gary doesn't react. The bomb explodes. SpongeBob then announces he's going to assault Gary's mind with subliminal messages. Pictures of a bathtub, a shower faucet running, and a bar of soap appear on screen. Then a disturbing picture of a giggling girl shows up. SpongeBob apologizes that Gary had to see that. SpongeBob calls a fancy French restaurant on the phone. He tells them he has a naughty snail who won't take a bath. Someone on the other end speaks rapidly in what sounds like French. SpongeBob asks them to say it again and complains it's like they're speaking some other language. While SpongeBob is distracted on the phone, Gary slithers away. SpongeBob hangs up. SpongeBob then suggests playing leapfrog. He demonstrates by jumping happily. He tells Gary it's his turn. SpongeBob flips Gary into the wall, which breaks his shell. The next shot shows Gary with his shell bandaged, holding a cane. SpongeBob suggests leapfrog again. Gary whacks him on the head with the cane. SpongeBob tries a different approach. He announces he has a crisp dollar bill for the next person to take a bath in this house. Mr. Krabs immediately arrives riding in his bathtub like a car. He takes the dollar and rides away. SpongeBob stops his victory dance and realizes that didn't work either. Gary is sleeping when SpongeBob, dressed as a pirate, runs to him. Gary wakes up. SpongeBob excitedly tells Gary he found an old pirate treasure map revealing the location of buried pirate treasure in this very house. He invites Gary to come get that treasure. SpongeBob tells Gary to go 40 paces to the left. He counts out loud, skipping through the numbers quickly until reaching 40. He nervously looks at Gary. "The treasure must be in here," he says, opening the bathroom door. SpongeBob announces they found a pirate treasure chest. Gary meows. SpongeBob insists this isn't the bathtub while kicking away a paint can, it's treasure. He shows Gary 2 bars of soap, calling them doubloons and warning Gary not to drop them. He shows Gary a rubber ducky, calling it a brooch. Gary meows questioningly. SpongeBob says he doesn't know what a snail would want with a brooch and demands Gary just get into the tub. SpongeBob tries repeatedly to throw Gary into the tub but fails every single time. He keeps saying get in the tub or in the tub with increasing frustration. On one attempt, Gary floats over the tub and reappears on the floor 2 seconds later. SpongeBob asks if Gary is going to get in the tub or if he's going to have to force him. He pulls Gary up off the floor, but they both end up dangling from the ceiling. SpongeBob asks Gary to do something. Gary sucks one eye into his head, causing SpongeBob to lose his grip. Gary pulls in his other eye. SpongeBob falls into the tub. SpongeBob declares that Gary has duped and frustrated him for the last time. If he can't get Gary to come to the bath, he'll just have to bring the bath to Gary. SpongeBob absorbs all the water in the bathtub into his body like a sponge. He approaches Gary and announces bath delivery. He spits water at Gary but misses and hits the armchair instead. The chair gets cleaned. SpongeBob tells Gary to come back because he has something to chair with him. He spits more water but misses again, hitting dirty dishes instead. The dishes get cleaned and stacked. SpongeBob makes another pun, saying dish is more like it. He asks what Gary is water waiting for, making yet another pun. This is where the scene with the ladder error occurs. Gary is meowing from up in a tree. SpongeBob comments that Gary is stuck in a tree and it's time to clean up his act. He spits water at Gary, but then realizes it's a gramophone playing a record of Gary's meows, not actually Gary. SpongeBob panics, thinking he bathed Gary too hard and removed his skin. Meanwhile, Gary is mockingly meowing while taking the ladder away from the tree. SpongeBob demands Gary bring that ladder back this instant. The ladder falls down behind Gary. According to the documented error, the ladder remains visible behind Gary for the next 2 shots. However, in all the following shots after those 2, the ladder completely disappears. The ladder is never seen again for the rest of the scene, even though it should still be lying on the ground where Gary dropped it. SpongeBob, still stuck in the tree, tells Gary he is really not amused. Gary is going to take a bath and get clean right now. Gary meows in response. SpongeBob insists he is so the boss of Gary. Gary meows again. SpongeBob says it may be a free country, but Gary lives in his house under his rules. Gary meows once more. SpongeBob tells Gary not to use that tone of voice with him. Gary will do what SpongeBob says when he says it. Gary slithers forward. SpongeBob asks what Gary is doing, and says he's talking to him. Gary stops right next to a mud puddle. SpongeBob orders Gary not to go near that mud puddle. He addresses Gary by his full name, Gary the Snail, and asks if he hears him. SpongeBob gives Gary 3 seconds to get away from the mud puddle. He counts to 1. Gary moves closer to the mud. SpongeBob counts to 2. Gary moves even closer. SpongeBob says 2.5. Gary leans over the mud. SpongeBob warns Gary not to make him say 3. Gary leans further over the mud. SpongeBob keeps saying Gary's name repeatedly. SpongeBob falls out of the tree and lands in the mud puddle. He declares he's a dirty boy. The scene cuts to SpongeBob now in the bathtub taking a bath. Gary meows triumphantly. SpongeBob acknowledges Gary while scrubbing behind his ears, saying he's cleaning behind his ears. Gary grins as the episode ends. The disappearing ladder error occurs during the tree sequence. The ladder is a crucial object in this scene because it explains how SpongeBob got up into the tree in the first place and why he's now stuck there. Gary removes the ladder, trapping SpongeBob in the tree. When Gary drops the ladder, it should remain on the ground throughout the rest of the scene. The fact that it's visible for 2 shots confirms the animators initially included it in the background. However, the ladder then vanishes in subsequent shots without any explanation. Gary doesn't pick it up again. No one moves it. It simply stops being drawn in the scene. This type of continuity error happens when different shots are created by different animators or at different times. The first animator remembers to include the dropped ladder in the background. The second animator, working on later shots, forgets to include it or doesn't realize it should still be there. Animation production involves creating each shot separately and then assembling them into a sequence. Background artists draw the settings. Character animators draw the characters moving within those settings. Props and objects need to be consistently included across all shots within a scene. When an object appears in some shots but not others, it creates a continuity break that observant viewers notice. The ladder error is particularly noticeable because the object is relatively large and important to the scene's logic. The ladder explains why SpongeBob is stuck. Its disappearance doesn't affect the story because SpongeBob remains in the tree regardless, but viewers who notice the inconsistency find it jarring. The ladder should remain visible on the ground for the entire scene, but instead it exists and then doesn't exist without explanation. Gary Takes a Bath is notable for its creative storytelling structure. The entire episode focuses on SpongeBob's escalating attempts to get Gary to bathe. Each attempt becomes more elaborate and ridiculous than the last. The episode showcases the adversarial relationship between SpongeBob and Gary, with Gary proving to be cleverer and more stubborn than his owner. The ending where SpongeBob ends up being the one who needs a bath provides perfect, ironic closure. The episode demonstrates Gary's intelligence and agency as a character. Unlike typical pet characters who simply obey their owners, Gary actively resists and outsmarts SpongeBob at every turn. He anticipates SpongeBob's plans, escapes his traps, and ultimately manipulates the situation so that SpongeBob is the one who gets dirty and needs bathing. This dynamic makes Gary more than just a pet. He's a fully realized character with his own desires and the cunning to achieve them. SpongeBob's increasingly desperate schemes show his determination, but also his failure to understand that forcing Gary won't work. Each new attempt is more elaborate than the last, but Gary remains unmoved. The pirate treasure scheme shows SpongeBob's creativity, but Gary sees through it immediately. The bomb threat, the subliminal messages, and the French restaurant call all fail because Gary understands SpongeBob's tricks. The physical comedy throughout the episode is well executed. SpongeBob getting hit by the boomerang toy box, the bomb exploding, the failed leapfrog attempt that breaks Gary's shell, and SpongeBob falling into the tub all provide visual humor. The scene where SpongeBob absorbs bathwater and chases Gary while spitting water creates comedy through both the absurd visual and the unintended consequences of cleaning furniture and dishes. The ladder error doesn't diminish these comedy elements or the episode's overall success. Most viewers watching casually wouldn't notice the ladder's disappearance because they're focused on the comedy and the escalating conflict between SpongeBob and Gary. The error only becomes apparent on repeated viewings when someone pays close attention to background details. The episode aired during Season 2, though it wasn't broadcast until 2003, making it one of the later airing Season 2 episodes. Season 2 ran from 2000 to 2003 and is considered part of SpongeBob's golden age. Episodes from this period are frequently cited as examples of the show's best work. Gary Takes a Bath fits this standard with its tight focus on a single conflict and its creative variety in showing SpongeBob's attempts. The episode's structure, showing multiple failed attempts in sequence, creates a rhythm that builds momentum. Each failure leads to another attempt, and each attempt becomes more ridiculous. This structure is similar to classic cartoons, where characters try repeatedly to achieve a goal, failing in different creative ways each time. The episode pays homage to this tradition while adding SpongeBob's unique humor and character dynamics. Gary's character shines in this episode. While he doesn't speak beyond his meows, his actions clearly communicate his intelligence, stubbornness, and eventual victory. The final scene where Gary grins while SpongeBob bathes demonstrates Gary's satisfaction at having turned the tables. Gary wanted to avoid a bath, and through clever maneuvering, he not only avoided bathing but made SpongeBob bathe instead. The disappearing ladder exists as a documented error in the SpongeBob fan community. Multiple sources confirm the continuity mistake. The latter appears when Gary drops it, remains visible for 2 shots, and then vanishes without explanation in all subsequent shots. This pattern of appearing and then disappearing creates the continuity error. Animation errors like this are inevitable in television production. Every episode requires hundreds or thousands of individual drawings or frames. Objects in the background need to be consistently placed across multiple shots within a scene. With different artists working on different shots and tight production deadlines, mistakes occur. The latter error is straightforward. An object that should be present isn't present in all the shots where it should appear. The error doesn't affect the episode's story or entertainment value. SpongeBob remains stuck in the tree whether the latter is visible or not. Gary's triumph works regardless of whether the latter remains in frame. The episode succeeds based on its comedy, pacing, and character dynamics rather than the perfect consistency of background objects. For fans who enjoy finding errors and continuity mistakes, the disappearing ladder provides an example to discover and discuss. It requires careful attention to notice because the ladder isn't the focus of the scene. Viewers naturally watch SpongeBob and Gary, not the background objects. Only by specifically looking for the ladder across multiple shots does the error become apparent. The latter error demonstrates the collaborative nature of animation production. Multiple people work on different aspects of each episode. Someone draws the ladder in the initial shots. Someone else works on the later shots and forgets to include it. During editing and review, the missing ladder isn't caught. These human oversights are understandable given the complexity and time pressure of producing animated television. Gary Takes a Bath remains a popular episode despite the latter error. Fans remember it for SpongeBob's creative schemes, Gary's cleverness, the humorous reversals, and the satisfying ending. The latter error is a footnote in discussions about the episode rather than a defining feature. The episode's success comes from its storytelling and humor, not the perfect consistency of every background object across every shot. The error serves as evidence that SpongeBob SquarePants, like all television shows, contains imperfections. These mistakes don't diminish the show's quality or the talent of the people who created it. They simply reflect the reality of producing animated content under deadline pressures, with multiple artists collaborating on different elements. The episode's title, Gary Takes a Bath, proves ironic because Gary never actually takes a bath. Instead, SpongeBob ends up bathing after falling in the mud. This ironic reversal is foreshadowed throughout the episode as Gary consistently outsmarts SpongeBob. The title tricks viewers into expecting one outcome while delivering another, making the ending more satisfying. The disappearing ladder in Gary Takes a Bath stands as a clear example of a continuity error in SpongeBob SquarePants. The object appears when dropped, remains visible briefly, and then vanishes without explanation. This mistake has been documented by fans and appears in error compilations. While noticeable to viewers who pay close attention to background details, the error doesn't affect the episode's comedy, story, or overall success. The episode remains a strong example of Season 2's creativity and humor, with the latter error existing as a minor technical flaw in an otherwise well-crafted episode. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Boss for a Day Double Mr. Krabs. In the SpongeBob SquarePants episode Boss for a Day, which aired on the 17th of July 2020, a notable animation error creates a bizarre visual impossibility. After Mr. Krabs returns from the hospital in a wheelchair, bandaged and injured, SpongeBob greets him at the entrance. However, if viewers look behind SpongeBob toward the cash register area, another Mr. Krabs can be seen in the background also injured and facing the register. This creates the appearance of two Mr. Krabs existing simultaneously in the same scene, making it one of the more obvious duplication errors in the series. The episode begins at the Krusty Krab during a busy shift. Mr. Krabs is frantically managing the chaos. He's asking about the order for Table 3, saying Table 5 is ready to be bussed, and there's a spill in the bathroom. He orders Squidward to swab the deck. His eyes act like periscopes scanning the restaurant. He spots SpongeBob and tells him Table 8 needs more coral fries. SpongeBob gasps and says he's hopping to it. Various customers make demands. Medley Fishbowl says his thirst isn't yet quenched. Mr. Krabs laughs as he serves him, reminding the customer there are no free refills. Dave grunts that he's out of ketchup. Miss Shell says they need utensils. Lenny honks his car horn and complains he ordered his food to go. Mr. Krabs handles everything while commenting that it takes a pretty steady claw to oversee this ship. Mr. Krabs' claw starts barking and smelling like a dog. He asks what it smells. His claw has found a penny on the floor. Mr. Krabs recites the rhyme about finding a penny and picking it up, declaring all day long you'll have a penny. He laughs and scrubs his claws, calling it a good girl. SpongeBob opens the kitchen door directly into Mr. Krabs' butt, announcing order up. This collision sets off a chain reaction. Mr. Krabs falls into a customer, breaks a table, smashes into a pole, knocks down the Krusty Krab sign, falls into the road, and a penny falls onto the pavement. A worker fish talks to the camera about finding a penny. At that exact moment, a piano falls onto Mr. Krabs. An ambulance immediately arrives. SpongeBob panics and yells for someone to call an ambulance, then stops panicking when he realizes the ambulance is already there. Squidward walks outside. SpongeBob asks Mr. Krabs who will be in charge while he's out. Mr. Krabs wakes up and must choose between SpongeBob and Squidward. He's about to point to Squidward when Squidward holds up SpongeBob, making it appear Mr. Krabs is choosing SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs' mouth looks like piano keys as his broken claw points. He says, "Not SpongeBob." The paramedic named Jamal says they need to go. Mr. Krabs protests repeatedly. SpongeBob completely misunderstands and thinks Mr. Krabs picked him. He jumps in the air, declaring he's in charge. He promises to be the best boss the Krusty Krab ever had, just like Mr. Krabs. Squidward laughs and says SpongeBob can't do Mr. Krabs' job. SpongeBob cries and asks if he really can't. Squidward says, of course not. SpongeBob will get some annoying idea in his head, act all silly, and ruin everything like he always does. Squidward walks away. SpongeBob thinks to himself, if he wants to become a boss like Mr. Krabs, he'll learn to think like Mr. Krabs. SpongeBob's appearance morphs to look like Mr. Krabs, and he laughs with Mr. Krabs' distinctive laugh. A bubble transition shows time passing. The scene returns to the Krusty Krab, with Sadie bringing Mr. Krabs back in a wheelchair. This is the moment when the animation error occurs. SpongeBob opens the door and greets Mr. Krabs, saying he's so glad he's back. Mr. Krabs shakes in response. Behind SpongeBob, near the cash register area, another injured Mr. Krabs can be seen. This second Mr. Krabs also appears to be bandaged and facing toward the register. The error is visible enough that viewers who look at the background can spot it, though it happens quickly, and many viewers miss it on first viewing. SpongeBob pushes Mr. Krabs' wheelchair and tells him to wait until he sees what's been done to the restaurant. He pulls the wheelchair around, showing Mr. Krabs the dining area and customers. SpongeBob announces proudly that nothing has changed. Everything is just how Mr. Krabs left it. Whenever there's a problem, SpongeBob asks himself what Mr. Krabs would do, and then he does that. He spins the wheelchair, making Mr. Krabs dizzy. SpongeBob explains he even hired a new fry cook since he's too busy being the boss now. He turns the wheelchair so Mr. Krabs can see the new employee. Mr. Krabs makes weird, angry sounds. Patrick is revealed wearing SpongeBob's pants with a spatula stuck in his belly button. Patrick puts the spatula back and tries to eat a patty. SpongeBob assures Mr. Krabs not to worry because he taught Patrick everything he knows. He turns the wheelchair again, making Mr. Krabs dizzy once more. Patrick puts the spatula in his mouth and grabs ketchup. He puts the spatula back in his hand where it drools. He flips the ketchup with the spatula and puts it on the grill. The grill is burning and the ketchup is about to explode. Squidward is reading his book during his shift. The explosion covers his face, part of his book, and one of the windows with ketchup. Patrick announces order up. Squidward gets very angry. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs he'll have a better view of the managerial magic from another location. He turns the wheelchair again, making Mr. Krabs dizzy. A customer named Kara says she's out of napkins. SpongeBob sees this as an opportunity to demonstrate his skills. He brings napkins to the customer. Kara thanks him. Another customer named Charlie points out his baby is jumping on the table because it's too wobbly. SpongeBob says he'll let the boss take care of that. He uses duct tape, but instead of fixing the table, he duct tapes the baby to the table. The baby makes weird sounds while stuck. Squidward angrily yells at a customer, asking what they want. SpongeBob gasps at this rudeness. He asks what Mr. Krabs would say. SpongeBob morphs into looking like Mr. Krabs and speaks in his voice, saying that at the Krusty Krab they're always polite to paying customers. Squidward changes his tone and politely welcomes the customer and asks to take their order. SpongeBob reminds Squidward about service with a smile and suggests using one of Mr. Krabs' vintage training devices. He puts Squidward's head in the device, forcing a freaky smile. Squidward asks to take the order through his forced smile. The customer says he'll take a Krabby Patty but hold the freaky smile. SpongeBob thinks that went well. Squidward starts yelling at SpongeBob, calling him aggravating, obnoxious, and loathsome. They hear a loud noise, and SpongeBob asks Squidward to hold that constructive criticism. SpongeBob goes to investigate. Patrick is using tongs to hold a brick while cleaning the deli slicer. SpongeBob morphs to look like Mr. Krabs and corrects Patrick, explaining the tongs are for holding rags, not bricks. SpongeBob tells Patrick to get back on the grill while he finishes cleaning. Patrick says okay and throws the brick at the deli slicer. The brick goes through the window and hits Mr. Krabs in the face, making him dizzy. The next scene shows Patrick at the grill smashing his spatula. SpongeBob asks if Patrick could bump the grill temperature up about half a degree. Patrick says fine, but instead starts flipping patties counterclockwise. SpongeBob taps his finger at Patrick and explains he should flip patties with a clockwise wrist motion because, as he morphs into Mr. Krabs to say, the customer can always taste the difference. Patrick agrees while calling SpongeBob boss. He comments that the spatula is dirty and proceeds to smash the patties with it. SpongeBob gasps when Patrick puts the Krabby Patty together in the wrong order. He reminds Patrick they went over this. It goes bun, patty, cheese, pickles, lettuce, tomatoes, bun, not bun, patty, cheese, lettuce, pickles, tomatoes, bun. Patrick has had enough. He says this was supposed to be fun, but now it's the other thing. He quits. He eats his Krabby Patty, and before walking out, rips off his pants and throws them, saying these too. SpongeBob calls after him, saying Patrick is his best friend employee. SpongeBob walks to the door and spins vertically. His eyes, nose, and mouth disappear. He falls to the ground. A second SpongeBob with eyes, nose, mouth, and pants appears. SpongeBob is impressed with this real slice off the old block. He grabs the spatula and asks if the copy can work the grill. The copy takes the spatula and laughs. SpongeBob declares him hired. An angry mob approaches Squidward at the register. Squidward walks out of the Krusty Krab with an angry face. SpongeBob morphs into Mr. Krabs and reminds him it's not time for his break. Squidward says he's taking a permanent break from SpongeBob. He smashes SpongeBob with his head and yells that he quits. He slams his hat at SpongeBob while breaking the floor and walks out. SpongeBob morphs back to normal and realizes he needs more employees. The angry mob approaches SpongeBob. He tells everyone to wait just a second. He makes a paper airplane out of one of his copies and throws it at the cashier. Another SpongeBob copy appears and asks how he can help. Customers come in order. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs everything is under control and he guarantees it. Chaos immediately erupts. Shooby spills something. Nathiel trips and falls with water on his head and a Krabby Patty on his legs. He says he fell down. Thaddeus points at the TV and asks why it doesn't work. Harold waves his hand like a fan because it's too hot. Nat is freezing because it's too cold. SpongeBob looks around asking what to do. Mr. Krabs feels angry and bounces up and down in his wheelchair. SpongeBob waves his hands and screams for everybody to stop. SpongeBob goes into the kitchen and uses the deli slicer to create 11 copies of himself. The copies help customers and try to manage the chaos. Patrick opens the door completely naked without his underwear or shorts. He's carrying a box and tells everyone not to mind him as he's just cleaning out his desk. Customers are shocked. SpongeBob is dancing when his copies start blowing away. Nathiel's water cup falls on his head again and the Krabby Patty lands on his legs again. Nat's umbrella falls and snow blows. SpongeBob begs them to stop because they're ruining the Krusty Krab dining experience. The SpongeBob copies hit the fan. They get shredded and fall on the floor. Customers get hit with shredded copies and run out of the restaurant. Mr. Krabs makes weird, angry sounds. His bandages unwrap, his wheelchair breaks, and the shredded copies blow away. SpongeBob is revealed tangled in the fan. He apologizes for letting Mr. Krabs down. All he wanted was to be a good boss just like him. Mr. Krabs says there's no need to get his sails in a twist about it. Nobody's just like him, especially not SpongeBob. He looks down at his empty body cast and shakes it. He explains that SpongeBob actually saved him months in the cast. If it weren't for the rage he felt watching SpongeBob destroy his restaurant, he would never have forced his body to heal so quickly. He flexes his claws like showing muscles. SpongeBob asks if in a way he's done good. Mr. Krabs shakes his head and says no, not even close. SpongeBob was the worst boss ever. Mr. Krabs will have to dock his pay for decades just to cover all the damage. He laughs and turns on the fan as he walks away. SpongeBob thanks him and says he's the best boss ever while spinning along with the fan. The episode ends. The double Mr. Krabs error occurs during the scene when Sadie brings Mr. Krabs back from the hospital. The primary Mr. Krabs is clearly visible in his wheelchair, being greeted by SpongeBob at the entrance. However, a second Mr. Krabs appears in the background near the cash register area, also appearing injured. This creates an impossible situation where two versions of the same character exist simultaneously in the same location. Animation errors involving character duplication typically happen when different layers or elements of a scene aren't properly coordinated. Background characters or objects might be placed in a scene, and then the main character is added without removing the background element. Or different animators working on different parts of the scene might not communicate about character placement. When the final scene is assembled, both versions of the character appear together. The error is noticeable but brief. Viewers focused on SpongeBob greeting Mr. Krabs might not look at the background carefully enough to spot the second Mr. Krabs. The scene moves quickly as SpongeBob begins talking and moving the wheelchair. The duplicate Mr. Krabs doesn't stay on screen long enough for casual viewers to process what they're seeing. Only on repeated viewings or when specifically looking for the error does it become obvious. Boss for a Day comes from Season 12, which aired from 2018 to 2021. Later seasons of SpongeBob have different animation styles and production methods compared to the early seasons. Digital animation has replaced traditional hand-drawn techniques, which changes how errors occur. Some types of mistakes become less common while new types emerge based on digital workflow issues. The episode itself focuses on SpongeBob's misguided attempts to emulate Mr. Krabs as a boss. The comedy comes from SpongeBob taking Mr. Krabs' worst qualities and amplifying them. He creates chaos while genuinely believing he's doing a good job. The ending, where Mr. Krabs admits SpongeBob's failures, helped him heal faster through rage, provides a darkly humorous conclusion. The double Mr. Krabs error doesn't affect the story or comedy. Whether one or two Mr. Krabs appear in that shot doesn't change SpongeBob's greeting or the subsequent scenes. Most viewers wouldn't notice the duplication on first viewing. The error exists as background detail rather than a central visual element. For fans who enjoy finding animation mistakes, the double Mr. Krabs moment provides a clear example of a duplication error. The character appears in two places, doing two different things simultaneously. There's no ambiguity about whether it's a mistake. Mr. Krabs can't be in his wheelchair at the entrance while also standing by the register. The error is definitive. The episode demonstrates how SpongeBob's interpretation of being a boss differs fundamentally from actual management. He copies Mr. Krabs' surface behaviors like his voice and mannerisms, but misses the actual skills needed to run a restaurant. His hiring of Patrick as fry cook, his duct taping of the baby, and his creation of multiple copies of himself all show poor judgment despite good intentions. The animation error serves as a reminder that even modern digital animation contains mistakes. Every episode requires hundreds of decisions about character placement, timing, and layering. With multiple artists working on different elements and tight production schedules, errors inevitably occur. The double Mr. Krabs is one such mistake that made it through review and into the final broadcast. The error has been documented by fans and appears in discussions about SpongeBob animation mistakes. WatchMojo included it in their list of SpongeBob errors. Online forums and social media have discussed the duplication. These conversations show how closely fans watch and analyze episodes, noticing details that most casual viewers miss entirely. Boss for a Day works as an episode regardless of the animation error. The humor comes from SpongeBob's failures and Mr. Krabs' reaction. The double Mr. Krabs doesn't enhance or detract from these comedy elements. It exists as a technical flaw separate from the episode's entertainment value. The episode's message about leadership and knowing one's limitations provides substance beyond just comedy. SpongeBob learns he can't simply imitate Mr. Krabs to become a good boss. Actual leadership requires skills and judgment he doesn't possess. His failure is complete but also educational. Mr. Krabs' acknowledgement that nobody is just like him, especially SpongeBob, reinforces that everyone has different strengths. The double Mr. Krabs error stands as a clear example of a character duplication mistake in SpongeBob SquarePants. The error occurs when Mr. Krabs returns from the hospital, appearing both in his wheelchair at the entrance and also visible in the background near the register. This impossible duplication lasted briefly but long enough for observant viewers to spot. The error has been documented in fan communities and error compilations. While noticeable to those who look for it, the mistake doesn't affect the episode's story or humor. Boss for a Day succeeds based on its comedy and character dynamics rather than technical perfection, with the double Mr. Krabs existing as a minor visual flaw in the production. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Plankton, the Vanishing Radio. In the SpongeBob SquarePants episode Plankton, which aired on the 31st of July 1999, a continuity error occurs involving a gramophone record player that mysteriously disappears. When Plankton sneaks onto SpongeBob's pillow at night, he pulls out a gramophone and plays evil music while laughing. However, when SpongeBob wakes up the next morning, the gramophone has completely vanished without any explanation. Plankton didn't take it with him when he entered SpongeBob's brain, and SpongeBob didn't move it. The object simply disappears between scenes, creating a noticeable continuity mistake. The episode begins with an aerial view of the Krusty Krab. Inside, Squidward calls for one Krabby Patty for table 2, complaining he doesn't have all day. The scene cuts to the kitchen where SpongeBob is speaking in a French accent. He calls himself preparing a Krabby Patty with various theatrical flair. First comes the patty, which he flips in the air. It falls into one of his holes. Next come the ingredients, which he throws in the air and catches in his holes and pants. He squirts mustard that lands in his eye. Squidward yells at SpongeBob to quit fooling around and asks where his Krabby Patty is. SpongeBob tells him to hold on a second. He takes his head off and shakes it all up like a cocktail shaker. When he puts his head back on his body, his eyes roll around. He presents the finished patty to Squidward, pulling it from under his nose. SpongeBob laughs and puts it on a plate, returning to his normal voice. Squidward pretends to laugh sarcastically, saying SpongeBob is killing him. SpongeBob looks at the patty admiringly and calls it Mr. Krabs' gift to all of Bikini Bottom. Squidward asks for the patty, but it suddenly flies off the plate and starts bouncing all over the place. Squidward tells SpongeBob to stop it. SpongeBob swears he's not doing anything. He calls to Mr. Krabs that the Krabby Patty is haunted. The patty slithers out the door and heads for the exit. Mr. Krabs spears it with his leg. A tiny thing comes out from the patty. Mr. Krabs inspects it with a magnifying glass. Through the magnifying glass, viewers can see it's Plankton. Mr. Krabs identifies him as a patty pirate stealing his booty. Plankton announces that when he discovers the formula for Krabby Patties, he'll run Mr. Krabs out of business. He went to college. Mr. Krabs picks him up. Plankton demands to be let go. Mr. Krabs says he'll let Plankton go on a flying saucer. He puts Plankton on a plate, laughs, and opens the doors of the Krusty Krab. He announces he's sending Plankton back to the chum bucket and spins the plate across the street. Plankton slams through the doors of his restaurant, yelling that Mr. Krabs will pay for this. SpongeBob asks about Plankton. Mr. Krabs explains that Plankton has been trying to steal his secret formula for years, but hasn't gotten it yet. He laughs. SpongeBob joins in with loud braying laughter. Mr. Krabs stops laughing, but SpongeBob continues. Mr. Krabs tells him, okay, that's enough. It wasn't that funny. He angrily orders SpongeBob to get back to work. SpongeBob immediately stops laughing. A bubble transition shows time passing to nighttime at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob says goodbye to Mr. Krabs from inside. Mr. Krabs wishes him good night. SpongeBob walks out and passes the chum bucket contently. An unseen voice calls to SpongeBob, addressing him as young man. SpongeBob looks around trying to find where the voice came from. The voice tells him to look over here and come closer. SpongeBob walks forward. The voice tells him closer again. SpongeBob keeps walking. The voice yells not that close. A crunching sound is heard. SpongeBob lifts up his shoe, revealing a squished Plankton stuck to the bottom. Plankton calls him a blasted barnacle head, then corrects himself to say hi instead. SpongeBob recognizes Plankton and peels him off his shoe onto his hand. Plankton says ouch. SpongeBob asks what he wants. Plankton says he just wants to talk. They could say they're friends, right? SpongeBob says no. Plankton asks if they're acquaintances. SpongeBob says no again. After a pause, Plankton points out that they're both invertebrates. SpongeBob guesses that's true. Plankton says everything works out then. Plankton announces he has something for SpongeBob. He's been keeping it in his secret compartment. He rummages through his back pocket and takes out a golden spatula. The spatula sparkles. SpongeBob is amazed by the golden spatula and notices it even has his name on it. Plankton calls it a gift from a friend. He hugs SpongeBob's thumb. Friends give each other gifts, and tomorrow is his birthday. He puts a birthday hat on his own head and on SpongeBob's thumb, then blows a noisemaker. He takes out a cake and asks what SpongeBob thinks he'd like more than anything in the whole wide world. He blows out the candles. SpongeBob guesses a booster seat. Plankton takes off the hat and throws out the cake. He repeats booster seat enthusiastically, then corrects himself to say no. What he wants for his birthday from his friend is one of those tender, delicious Krabby Patties. He starts drooling. SpongeBob drops Plankton and gasps. He accuses Plankton of only wanting to be friends to get his hands on a Krabby Patty. He bets it's not even Plankton's birthday tomorrow. Plankton comments that he thought SpongeBob was stupid. SpongeBob declares Plankton will never get a Krabby Patty from him. He walks off, then stops to add that this applies even if they are friends. He runs off, repeating never multiple times. Plankton says he'll get a Krabby Patty and SpongeBob is going to hand-deliver it personally. He calls SpongeBob a weak-minded fool. He takes out a gramophone that plays evil music and laughs evilly along with it. The scene cuts to SpongeBob's bedroom where SpongeBob goes to sleep. He says goodnight to Gary. Gary meows. SpongeBob settles in to sleep. Just then, one of the flowers on SpongeBob's bedsheets pops up. It's Plankton in disguise wearing a backpack that looks like an antenna-like machine. Plankton chuckles evilly and declares SpongeBob will be his. He pulls out the gramophone and starts to laugh evilly to it. This is where the continuity error begins. Plankton has brought the gramophone onto SpongeBob's pillow. The gramophone is a physical object sitting on the bed. However, instead of playing evil music, it actually plays a children's song of the ABCs. A woman's voice sings about letters of the alphabet. Plankton immediately realizes his mistake and flips the record to the other side. Now it plays the evil music he wanted, and he laughs evilly along with it. After this moment with the gramophone, Plankton walks through one of SpongeBob's holes and begins his journey inside SpongeBob's body. He reads a map that looks like a regular road map, except with a giant brain in the middle. He wonders where the brain should be. The camera pans out to reveal he's standing on the brain itself. Plankton takes off the antenna thing from his back and declares this will be the beginning of the end. Outside SpongeBob's body, SpongeBob rolls to his left in his sleep. Inside, the brain falls to the right, and Plankton falls off, saying ouch and calling the brain stupid. He gives chase, telling it to come back. SpongeBob then rolls to his right. Inside, the brain squishes Plankton. SpongeBob then sleeps on his back, and the brain stops rolling. Plankton holds up a roll of duct tape and says the brain is going down. He uses tape to hold the brain in place. Plankton takes out blueprints for his very elaborate and college-educated plan. The blueprints show a picture of the antenna labeled Control, with an arrow pointing to a picture of a brain labeled Brain. Plankton follows these instructions by jamming the control device into the brain. He announces it's time for a little wake-up. With his hands on the control levers, he uses his foot to press the total control button. Outside, SpongeBob wakes up saying, "Morning already?" This is when the continuity error becomes apparent. The gramophone that Plankton placed on SpongeBob's pillow is nowhere to be seen. Plankton left it on the bed when he entered SpongeBob's body. The gramophone should still be visible on the pillow or somewhere on the bed, but it has completely vanished without explanation. SpongeBob didn't put it away. Plankton didn't take it with him. The object simply disappeared between the nighttime scene and the morning scene. Plankton jams the controls, causing SpongeBob's legs to stick out to his side. SpongeBob rumbles and falls down. Plankton laughs evilly. SpongeBob says he feels a little funny today. Using the controls, Plankton makes SpongeBob walk. Plankton declares he has SpongeBob now. Outside, SpongeBob walks toward the kitchen saying it's time for a well-balanced breakfast. He rams through the wall and through his refrigerator, emerging with bread, a bottle of milk, and an egg carton on his head. SpongeBob comments this isn't what he had in mind. He walks toward the straps holding his pants. He says he'll just grab his pants. He walks toward them and they spring him back. He eventually breaks free and keeps walking, saying he guesses he's not wearing any pants today. He crashes through the side of the wall and says he guesses he's not using the door either. He tells Gary he'll see him later, adding, "I guess." Gary meows a response. SpongeBob agrees that Gary is right, there is something wrong with him. SpongeBob calls for Squidward to wake up because he needs help. Inside Squidward's house, Squidward tries to sleep. From off-screen, SpongeBob keeps calling for help. Squidward yells for him to be quiet. SpongeBob bursts through the wall of Squidward's bedroom, still calling for help. Squidward demands to know what SpongeBob is doing and asks if he's mad. SpongeBob turns his head to Squidward. From inside SpongeBob, Plankton speaks through a microphone. Using SpongeBob's mouth, he tells Squidward to shut his mouth and calls him a mediocre clarinet player. Squidward repeats the word mediocre in offense. Plankton continues insulting Squidward through SpongeBob, calling him a pretentious, insignificant artist whose snivelly creations are worth less than a protozoan's waste. SpongeBob snaps out of confusion and declares something must be wrong with his brain. His eyes roll into the back of his head, and he sees Plankton inside. He gasps and calls out Plankton's name. Plankton raises his eyebrow. SpongeBob asks what kind of friend Plankton is. Plankton dismisses this as nonsense, saying SpongeBob never liked him anyway and wouldn't even come to his birthday party. From outside, SpongeBob yells for Plankton to get out of his head and leave his brain alone. Plankton refuses repeatedly and laughs evilly. SpongeBob walks out backwards. Squidward turns pale and faints. SpongeBob crashes through Patrick's rock and re-emerges with Patrick sleeping on his head. SpongeBob throws Patrick off and he gets pinned into the ground. SpongeBob walks toward the Krusty Krab. Inside SpongeBob, Plankton makes train noises and asks about getting some takeout. SpongeBob refuses repeatedly, saying never. He crashes through the Krusty Krab and re-emerges with a Krabby Patty. Plankton laughs evilly. SpongeBob says Plankton can't fool him because he wants the Krabby Patty formula. SpongeBob walks into the chum bucket. Plankton declares SpongeBob is going to hand-deliver it personally. SpongeBob keeps saying no. They walk through a door and SpongeBob comments there's no one here. Plankton tells him not to remind him. Plankton tells SpongeBob to brace himself because this is his lab. The room contains a screen with a live-action Labrador retriever. The dog barks. They walk into the next room, which is a real laboratory. Plankton asks if he ever showed SpongeBob his record player. He pulls the gramophone out again, playing dramatic music while laughing evilly. This is the same gramophone that was on SpongeBob's pillow earlier, though the episode never explains how Plankton retrieved it or where it was stored after disappearing from the bed. SpongeBob says he must fight. He mumbles nonsensically, stretches his head out, and bites against the side of the door while his body keeps trying to walk. Plankton says no repeatedly and pushes the levers forward. This causes SpongeBob to lose his grip and slam against the wall. He wobbles over to a giant funnel. Plankton explains this is his analyzer, which tells the ingredients of whatever he puts into it. A robot arm holding seaweed comes in and drops it in the giant funnel analyzer. It gets zapped and beeping is heard from the giant computer screen. The screen displays the analysis results. Karen Plankton's voice reads the results. Seaweed, 50% sea, 50% weed. A picture of seaweed appears on screen. Plankton asks if SpongeBob is impressed. Now they'll reveal the secret formula. Plankton laughs evilly and pulls the lever forward, making two of SpongeBob's fingers release from the patty. SpongeBob is holding it with both hands, so one finger from each hand lets go. Plankton makes references to the This Little Piggy nursery rhyme as more fingers lose their grip. He asks if SpongeBob has any last words. SpongeBob tries to resist but stops fighting. SpongeBob says he just has to say he's sorry for letting Mr. Krabs down. He let all of Bikini Bottom down, but worst of all, he let down the delicate little Krabby Patty. Tears start coming out of his eyes. One of his teary eyes twinkles. SpongeBob begins tearing up even more as he describes the patty's tasty, juicy, scrumptious, warm, steamy goodness. Inside, Plankton starts getting hungry. Plankton repeats the word steamy. A live-action patty gets assembled on screen as SpongeBob lists the ingredients. SpongeBob describes the 100% all-secret patty, secretly assembled with undersea cheese, pickles, lettuce, tomato, and onion, all secretly steaming between two fluffy seaweed sea buns. Inside SpongeBob, Plankton starts drooling excessively. Plankton repeats yes 3 times with increasing excitement. He jumps out of one of SpongeBob's holes toward the patty, yelling for it to come to Papa. He bounces off the patty and accidentally lands in the analyzer. The machine zaps him and the computer reads out the analysis. Karen's voice announces the results. Plankton, 1% evil, 99% hot gas. Plankton appears on the screen. He comments that this stinks. SpongeBob tells the patty they can go home now and walks out. Plankton yells that it's his Krabby Patty. SpongeBob walks out through the swivel doors, which go back and forth. Plankton demands he give it back, calling him a porous freak. He commands SpongeBob to stop. The doors come to a close. Plankton screams no in frustration, then in a normal voice says he'll settle for some fries. The episode ends. The vanishing gramophone represents a clear continuity error in the episode. The object is explicitly shown being placed on SpongeBob's pillow when Plankton disguises himself as a flower on the bed sheets. Plankton uses the gramophone to play evil music while cackling. He flips the record when it plays the wrong song. The gramophone is a physical object taking up space on the bed. When Plankton enters SpongeBob's body through one of his holes to reach the brain, he leaves the gramophone behind. There's no indication he takes it with him. The antenna backpack goes with him because he's wearing it, but the gramophone stays on the pillow. However, when SpongeBob wakes up in the morning, the gramophone is completely gone. It doesn't appear anywhere in the bedroom. SpongeBob doesn't comment on finding a strange object on his pillow. The gramophone has simply vanished. Later in the episode, when they're in the Chum Bucket laboratory, Plankton pulls out the gramophone again to play dramatic music. This creates additional confusion about where the gramophone was during the intervening scenes. If Plankton somehow retrieved it from SpongeBob's pillow, the episode doesn't show this happening. If he has multiple gramophones, this isn't established. The simplest explanation is that the animators forgot to show the gramophone on the bed in the morning scene, creating an unintended continuity error. Animation errors involving disappearing objects occur when different scenes are created separately without proper coordination. An artist drawing the nighttime scene includes the gramophone as a prop. A different artist working on the morning scene either forgets the gramophone should still be there or doesn't know it was placed on the pillow in the previous scene. When the scenes are assembled in sequence, the object appears in one shot and disappears in the next without explanation. Plankton is the 3rd episode of SpongeBob SquarePants and aired as part of the show's first season in 1999. The episode introduces several important elements of the series. It's the first episode to feature Plankton as the main antagonist. It establishes his goal of stealing the Krabby Patty secret formula. It shows the Chum Bucket for the first time. It introduces Karen, Plankton's computer wife, though only her voice appears in this episode. The episode's plot about Plankton controlling SpongeBob's brain creates comedy through the physical chaos SpongeBob causes while being controlled. He crashes through walls, breaks things, and can't perform basic tasks. The scene where Plankton insults Squidward through SpongeBob provides character humor. The ending where Plankton accidentally gets analyzed instead of the Krabby Patty delivers an ironic conclusion fitting his schemes. The vanishing gramophone doesn't affect the story or comedy. Whether the gramophone is visible on the bed or not doesn't change what happens in the episode. Most viewers watching for the first time wouldn't notice the object's disappearance because they're focused on the characters and dialogue rather than tracking props across scenes. The error only becomes noticeable when someone specifically pays attention to where objects are placed and whether they remain consistent throughout scenes. The gramophone itself is a recurring prop in the episode, appearing 3 times total. Plankton first shows it outside the chum bucket when explaining his plan to SpongeBob. He shows it again on SpongeBob's pillow while preparing to enter his brain. He shows it a third time in his laboratory while gloating. The gramophone serves as a visual representation of Plankton's villainous personality, providing dramatic music for his evil laughter. The episode demonstrates SpongeBob's early animation style with its mix of traditional underwater scenes and unexpected elements like live-action footage. The live-action Labrador Retriever in Plankton's lab creates a visual pun. The live-action Krabby Patty that appears when SpongeBob describes it shows the real food that inspired the cartoon version. These creative choices give the early episodes a distinct experimental quality. The vanishing gramophone error has been noted by fans who closely watch the series. While not as widely documented as some other SpongeBob mistakes, it represents a clear example of a continuity error involving a prop. The object appears, disappears, and reappears without logical explanation. Dedicated viewers who notice such details find these errors interesting as evidence of the production process and the challenges of maintaining consistency across scenes. Plankton establishes the ongoing conflict between Plankton and Mr. Krabs that becomes a major element of the series. Plankton's schemes to steal the formula provide plots for dozens of future episodes. His character as a tiny villain with big ambitions and elaborate plans creates comedy through the contrast between his size and his grandiose goals. His relationship with Karen adds another dimension to his character. The episode succeeds in introducing Plankton as a memorable antagonist, despite the gramophone continuity error. The vanishing object is a minor technical flaw that doesn't diminish the episode's entertainment value or its importance in establishing series mythology. Most viewers remember the episode for Plankton controlling SpongeBob's brain, the insults directed at Squidward, and the ironic ending rather than the placement of props across scenes. The gramophone error in Plankton demonstrates how animation production involves many separate elements that must be coordinated correctly. Props placed in one scene should remain visible in subsequent scenes unless explicitly moved. When this coordination breaks down, objects appear and disappear mysteriously. The vanishing gramophone is one such mistake that made it into the final broadcast, existing as a curiosity for fans who notice it, while not affecting the episode's overall quality or success as an introduction to one of SpongeBob's most important recurring characters. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Secret Box Missing House Redux. In the SpongeBob SquarePants episode, The Secret Box, which aired on the 7th of September 2001, an animation error occurs identical to one seen in other episodes. When SpongeBob sneaks over to Patrick's house at night to look inside the secret box, he goes directly from his pineapple house to Patrick's rock. Squidward's Easter Island head house, which should be visible between the two houses on Conch Street, is completely missing. This creates the same spatial impossibility as the missing identity error, where the iconic three-house layout of the neighborhood is broken by the absence of the middle house. The episode begins with SpongeBob running to Patrick's rock, calling for him and asking if he's ready to go jellyfishing. Patrick comes out of his rock, holding a box while doing an acrobatic trick. He enthusiastically confirms he's ready. SpongeBob hands Patrick his net, but Patrick glances at his box. SpongeBob tells him to come on because the jellyfish don't catch themselves. Patrick says first he has to put away his secret box. SpongeBob is surprised by the mention of a secret box. Patrick never told him about any secret box. SpongeBob tries to peek inside, but Patrick pulls it away. Patrick tells him hands off and calls him Peeping Bob. This is his secret box. Besides, if he showed SpongeBob what was inside, it wouldn't be a secret anymore. Patrick opens the box, laughs at it, and shuts it as SpongeBob tries to peek. Patrick tells SpongeBob that if only he could see what's inside the secret box, it would change his life. SpongeBob gets behind Patrick to try seeing inside, but Patrick holds it close to himself. SpongeBob says it's okay because he knows all about secrets. Patrick asks if he does. SpongeBob claims he has a gazillion secrets. Patrick asks for an example. SpongeBob explains that it's no secret that the best thing about a secret is secretly telling someone your secret, thereby secretly adding another secret to their secret collection of secrets. Secretly, Patrick drools as lightning bolts come out of the top of his head, showing he couldn't understand the complicated sentence. SpongeBob asks if Patrick wants to hear one of his secrets. Patrick asks if he does. SpongeBob runs up to Patrick and whispers that Patrick is his best friend, then runs away. Patrick is amazed by this revelation. He asks to hear another secret. SpongeBob says okay and reveals that secretly, he's a little bit naive. Patrick says he'll never look at SpongeBob the same way again. SpongeBob clears his throat and taps on Patrick's box. Patrick asks to hear more secrets. SpongeBob launches into a long list of secrets. He loves his job at the Krusty Krab. He sleeps with his shoes on. He likes jelly on both sides of his toast. He has an overdue library book. He thinks jellyfishing and bubble blowing are the CB's knees. The scene transitions to show time passing as SpongeBob continues listing secrets while Patrick lays his head on the box. SpongeBob reveals he has a slight overbite. He's never been late for work. He's said the word fancy in conversation. He likes to dance to loading zone announcements. He still doesn't have his driver's license. He's a little bit on the short side. And he's wearing 3 pairs of underwear right now. He shows his 3 pairs of underwear to Patrick. Patrick gasps and says he never would have guessed. SpongeBob asks if Patrick will now show him what's inside the secret box. Patrick refuses. It's for him to know and for SpongeBob to never find out. SpongeBob may be an open book, but Patrick is a bit more complicated than that. The inner machinations of his mind are an enigma. Patrick imagines a carton of milk spilling itself. SpongeBob declares he has plenty of secret stuff too. He shows his secret socks. He runs away and comes back with Gary's bowl, calling it his secret Gary's bowl. He runs away again and returns pushing his television, announcing it's his secret TV. He turns it on to show his secret TV channel, which displays off-air color bars. He asks Patrick what he thinks of that. Patrick isn't paying attention. He giggles, then laughs loudly after looking at the box. He stops to breathe, looks again, and laughs even harder and more wildly. Patrick suggests that maybe if SpongeBob saw what was inside, he'd know why it has to be secret. He shows the box to SpongeBob and explains that inside this very box is the most secret-y secret of all of Secret Dom, and he is its sole witness. It's a heavy burden, but nobody must know the mystery of the box. SpongeBob tries to peek inside, but Patrick slams it shut. Nobody can know, not even Squidward's house. The scene zooms out to show Squidward's tiki head home looking down at SpongeBob and Patrick, who notice this before it goes back to normal. Patrick says it's a full-time job, and he's constantly on alert. You never know when someone's going to try something. Patrick gasps when he realizes his box is gone. The scene cuts to SpongeBob laughing and running with Patrick's secret box. He bumps into Patrick's belly. Patrick demands to know what SpongeBob thinks he's doing. That's his secret box and he should hand it over. SpongeBob and Patrick struggle over the box. SpongeBob says he must know the secret. Patrick refuses for the last time. SpongeBob asks for just a peek. Patrick says never. They strain as they fight over the box. Eventually, SpongeBob's arms pop off and he gasps. Patrick says so it's come to this, and to think they joined the Best Friends Forever Club. He shows his finger with the ring on it, and the camera zooms in on the ring. He grabs one of SpongeBob's arms and points it at SpongeBob. He calls him SpongeBob's Secret Stealer Pants and pokes his nose with the arm. If SpongeBob ever comes near the secret box again, they won't be friends anymore. SpongeBob's eyes get big and sad. They're supposed to be friends forever. A flashback shows SpongeBob and Patrick as babies in a crib laughing, then as kids riding a bike, then as they are now riding a bike, then as old men in rocking chairs, then 2 gravestones with their names, while they continue laughing from underground. The flashback ends. SpongeBob says he feels filthy. He has soiled their friendship garden. He couldn't help himself. He jumps on Patrick, saying he knows it's Patrick's secret, and promises to respect that. He begs Patrick to forgive him. Patrick says he guesses it's not all SpongeBob's fault. After all, this is a pretty great secret. How could SpongeBob resist the greatest secret ever? The most amazing, mysterious, powerful secret in all Bikini Bottom. Patrick sticks the box in SpongeBob's eyes, which pop out and back in. SpongeBob asks if they're friends. Patrick agrees they're friends. They shake hands. The scene cuts to a night view of SpongeBob's house, then inside where SpongeBob talks to himself. What could be in that box that Patrick doesn't want him to see? Maybe it's the world's only albino jellyfish. Or maybe Patrick's a master jewel thief and it's full of diamonds. Or maybe Patrick's a deranged maniac who keeps his victims' severed heads in a box. Or even worse, maybe it's an embarrassing snapshot of SpongeBob from the Christmas party. SpongeBob screams and hurls himself toward the bedroom window. SpongeBob declares he's going to find out what's in that secret box. He's not going to rest until he does. His face pops off and sticks onto his back. That's it. How do you look into a secret box? Secretly, of course. He'll just take the box while Patrick's sleeping, look inside, and before Patrick even has time to notice, he'll slide it back. Patrick won't know, and SpongeBob will have his own little secret. He asks Gary if it's a good idea. Gary narrows his eyes and meows, "No." The scene cuts outside. SpongeBob dismisses Gary's opinion, saying, "What does a snail know?" This is where the animation error occurs. SpongeBob sneaks over to Patrick's house. The visual shows SpongeBob going directly from his pineapple to Patrick's rock. Squidward's Easter Island head house, which should be prominently visible between the two houses, is completely absent. The iconic three-house layout of Conch Street is broken, with only 2 houses visible instead of 3. SpongeBob puts on gloves and a ski mask. He crawls up the rock with his back and tears himself in half, getting both halves under the rock. He lands and notices Patrick sleeping. He screams gibberish and drools, then hides behind a portrait of SpongeBob and Patrick. SpongeBob peeks and the wall starts to crack. Patrick mumbles. The wall breaks even more, and the nail falls off. Patrick grabs the nail with his foot and puts it back, saying "secret" while the camera zooms in on the box. SpongeBob thinks to himself that he needs to be more quiet so he doesn't wake Patrick up. He slides down the wall from the portrait and makes a loud noise upon touching the floor. Patrick stretches and goes back to sleep. SpongeBob lifts his leg and Patrick makes another noise while tossing on the bed. SpongeBob puts his leg down, making a loud noise. Patrick asks who's there, mumbles, then goes back to sleep. SpongeBob tells his foot to be quiet. He steps on a potato chip, which makes a broken glass sound. Patrick asks who's there with gibberish, then goes back to sleep. SpongeBob sweeps his sweat drops off, and they land with a loud splash sound. Patrick says water and licks his mouth dry, then tosses himself on the bed. SpongeBob takes another step, making an awoga noise. He steps again with a machine gun noise. Another step makes an elephant sound. He stretches his leg, making a speeding car sound, then steps with a car crash sound. SpongeBob peeks above Patrick to see the box. He gets ready to reach for it, but Patrick grabs the box first. Patrick slides SpongeBob onto himself while saying, "Good old secret box, let's see what's inside." He opens SpongeBob's mouth and pulls out his tongue, laughs, and lets it go. He says nighty-night to the box and puts SpongeBob on the side of the bed. SpongeBob gets off the bed and trips on a shoestring, bouncing around Patrick's house making loud noises until his head hits the wall. The portrait falls and breaks in half. The box lands on SpongeBob with a loud noise. Despite all this noise, Patrick continues sleeping. SpongeBob comments that Patrick sure is a heavy sleeper. Patrick wakes up asking who said that and who's there. SpongeBob hesitates. Patrick declares it's the clam burglar stealing his secret box. He runs up to SpongeBob and readies his pillow like a shotgun, telling the secret box bandit to hand over the goods and prepare for the most unpleasant pillow fight of his life. SpongeBob tells Patrick to wait and stop. He takes off his mask, revealing himself. Patrick stares clueless and says nice try, but SpongeBob's his best friend and would never steal from him. SpongeBob insists it really is him and presses a button on the ring. The ring announces it's the best friends forever ring. Patrick recognizes the friendship ring and realizes it is SpongeBob. He cries into his pillow asking how SpongeBob could do this. SpongeBob says if it makes Patrick feel better, he hasn't looked inside. Patrick throws the pillow away and snatches the box, saying that's it. SpongeBob has crossed the line. As of right now, this friendship is over. SpongeBob gasps and tears up, asking if Patrick really means it. Patrick says no, SpongeBob can look inside if he really wants to. SpongeBob is excited, calling this one of the most exciting moments of his life. He lifts the lid off the box. Inside is just a string. Patrick asks if it's great. SpongeBob says it's just a string. Patrick corrects him, it's a secret string. SpongeBob agrees that Patrick is right. That's some secret box. He thanks Patrick for showing him and says goodnight. Patrick says goodnight back. SpongeBob pops out of Patrick's house. Outside, SpongeBob says he should have known it was just a piece of string all along. He laughs and says wait until he tells Gary. Inside, Patrick laughs menacingly. Good thing SpongeBob didn't pull the secret string, which opens a secret compartment in the secret box. Patrick takes out a photo, revealing one embarrassing snapshot of SpongeBob at the Christmas party. He wishes SpongeBob Merry Christmas and laughs as the screen fades to black, ending the episode. The missing house error occurs during the nighttime sequence when SpongeBob sneaks from his house to Patrick's rock. Conch Street's layout is one of the most recognizable settings in SpongeBob SquarePants. 3 houses sit in a row. SpongeBob's pineapple on one side, Squidward's Easter Island head in the middle, and Patrick's rock on the other side. This arrangement appears in countless episodes and is fundamental to the show's geography. When Squidward's house is missing, the entire street looks wrong. The visual shows only SpongeBob's pineapple and Patrick's rock with empty space between them. For a show that has established this 3-house layout so consistently, the absence of the middle house creates an obvious gap. Viewers familiar with Conch Street notice immediately that something is missing, even if they can't immediately identify what. The error is particularly notable in the secret box, because the episode makes a joke about Squidward's house earlier in the story. When Patrick says, not even Squidward's house can know the secret, the camera zooms out to show Squidward's house looking down at them. This draws attention to the house's presence and establishes that all 3 houses are there. Later, when the house disappears during the nighttime scene, the inconsistency becomes more apparent. Animation errors like missing houses typically occur when different scenes are created by different artists or teams. Someone working on the nighttime scene might not realize Squidward's house should be visible in that particular shot, or the background might be simplified for technical or time-saving reasons. When scenes are assembled into the final episode, the missing house isn't caught during review. The Conch Street layout is so iconic that its disruption stands out. The three houses have distinct shapes that create a recognizable silhouette. SpongeBob's pineapple with its green leaves on top, Squidward's Moai statue with its long nose and prominent brow, and Patrick's simple rock create visual variety. When one house is missing, the symmetry and balance of the composition feels off. The Secret Box aired during Season 2, which ran from 2000 to 2003. This period produced many of the show's most memorable episodes. The Secret Box is remembered for its exploration of friendship, secrets, and trust between SpongeBob and Patrick. The episode's humor comes from SpongeBob's mounting obsession with discovering what's in the box and Patrick's steadfast refusal to reveal it. The ending reveal that the box contains only a string provides a satisfying conclusion. SpongeBob accepts this simple answer and goes home content. But then Patrick reveals the secret compartment containing the embarrassing photo, showing that SpongeBob's paranoia was partially justified. The photo is exactly what SpongeBob feared might be in the box. This twist ending gives the episode replay value, as viewers can watch it again, knowing Patrick was hiding something genuinely secret the whole time. The missing house error doesn't affect the story or comedy. SpongeBob's break-in attempt works whether Squidward's house is visible or not. Most viewers watching casually focus on SpongeBob's comedic attempts to stay quiet while making increasingly loud noises. Patrick's absurdly heavy sleeping provides humor. The focus is on what happens inside Patrick's rock, rather than the geography outside. For dedicated fans who notice the error, it becomes another example of SpongeBob's continuity issues with the Conch Street layout. The same error appears in other episodes like Missing Identity, suggesting it's a recurring problem in the show's production. Background artists might work from references that don't always include all three houses, or they might simplify backgrounds to focus attention on the main characters. The episode itself works well as a character study of SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship. SpongeBob's respect for Patrick's privacy battles with his burning curiosity, Patrick's enjoyment of having a secret conflicts with his generous nature. The episode explores how secrets can create distance between friends, while also acknowledging that everyone deserves privacy. The resolution where Patrick offers to show SpongeBob the contents demonstrates trust, even though Patrick knows the string won't satisfy SpongeBob's expectations. The embarrassing Christmas party photo adds context to SpongeBob's paranoia throughout the episode. When SpongeBob specifically mentions fearing an embarrassing snapshot from the Christmas party, viewers might think it's random anxiety. The ending reveals it's a logical concern based on reality. Patrick does have an embarrassing photo. The secret compartment shows Patrick is more clever than he appears, able to maintain a long-term deception while seeming simple-minded. The missing house error in the secret box demonstrates how even successful, well-crafted episodes can contain visual mistakes. The episode succeeds based on its writing, character dynamics, and humor rather than perfect visual consistency. Most viewers remember the secret string reveal, the friendship conflict, and the twist ending rather than the presence or absence of Squidward's house in background shots. The error exists as documented fact in the SpongeBob fan community. Multiple sources note that Squidward's house is missing when SpongeBob sneaks to Patrick's rock. The error appears in discussions about SpongeBob animation mistakes and continuity errors. For fans who enjoy finding these mistakes, the missing house provides another example to discover and share. The episode's focus on secrets and privacy resonates beyond just the immediate plot. Everyone has information they keep private, and friends must respect boundaries even when curious. SpongeBob learns this lesson when Patrick threatens to end their friendship over the violation of trust. The episode balances comedy with genuine stakes, making the threat feel real even in a cartoon context. Patrick's character shines throughout the episode. He maintains his secret effectively despite SpongeBob's persistent attempts to discover it. His repeated looking at the box and laughing shows his enjoyment of the secret without revealing anything. His firm boundary setting when SpongeBob steals the box demonstrates that even simple-minded Patrick has limits. His ultimate willingness to show SpongeBob the string displays trust and generosity. The missing Squidward's house error serves as a reminder that animation production involves many moving parts. Every scene requires backgrounds to be drawn or created, characters to be animated, and elements to be composited together. When coordination breaks down or details are overlooked, errors emerge. The missing house is one such oversight that made it into the final broadcast. The Secret Box remains a popular episode despite the animation error. Fans quote Patrick's "The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma" line regularly. The embarrassing Christmas party photo has become part of SpongeBob lore. The episode successfully explores friendship themes while maintaining consistent humor throughout. The missing house is a minor visual flaw in an otherwise strong episode that effectively balances comedy with character development. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.